Welcome to Pop Culture Investigations with me, Dr. Luke Deckard. I'm really excited about the show tonight. I have Nadia. I was going to say Nadine for some
It's
with me.
okay.
I
It's okay.
have no idea why.
It's
That
okay.
fucking hell. I have Nadia with me from the Inside All Day podcast. Super nerd in the house with me. I'm also a super nerd. Yeah, today we're going to talk about one of the most controversial films of 2023, and that is the movie Saltburn, directed by Emerald Fennell. Um, let's just before we get into it, I don't know about you, but I have a lot of thoughts about this movie, and I know you actually I know you do too on this, but when it came to like my watching of this movie, right? I didn't really I didn't know anything about it. I knew nothing about it going in. A friend was texting me and they were like, "Oh, you should watch this movie. It's pretty, it's fun, yada yada yada." And I was like, "What's it? Kind of what's it about?" And they tried to sort of tell me. And then they said it's sort of in the vein of Parasite, which I
Okay.
really liked. Parasite. I thought that was an excellent movie and one of the last. I remember one of the last movies I saw in the cinema, kind of right before the big pandemic and all that kind of stuff years ago, years and years ago. But yeah, so what was your road to going into Saltburn before we actually get into the nitty-gritty of it? Did you know anything about it going in?
I knew nothing about it going
Mm,
in. All I knew about it because of social media talking about the 3, shocking scenes in the
yes.
movie, but basing it off emojis. So I would watch like a TikTok and it would be a reaction video and they would just show the person's reaction but not the scene and they would put either a little bathtub or a little drop of blood or maybe even what was that? A graveyard.
Yeah.
So I had actually kind of planned to watch it eventually, but because you asked me to be on the show, I was like, "Oh, all right, I'll go watch it." Oh
Right.
boy. Thanks, Luke. Thanks.
You're
Thanks
welcome.
for thanks for putting me through that.
You're very, very welcome. I shouldn't suffer alone and thought other people should join in on this suffering, you know?
And I did suffer. Oh, did
Yes.
I suffer?
Didn't we all? And I really went in. This is the thing. I want to caveat this before we get into it. I went in with an open mind. I know there's some people who like when you say you didn't like something or whatever, they automatically oh well you were just big negative. Oh well blah 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 blah. Blah. And it's like no, I went in excited. I went in hoping to like this hoping to like this movie.
Oh,
I
I
yeah
expected to like it. I 100% thought I was going to be pro Saltburn, that I was
right
going to enjoy this movie because I like her other movie, the director's Promising Young Woman. It
yes
ends a little but the story itself I enjoyed. So I'm like, okay, it's kind of in the same vein of Euphoria, this, really over the top young adult. I
yeah
feel like I'm watching a young adult novel on
right
screen, it's not
yeah
realism. There's no
yeah.
realistic that's going on here. This is not real. And I hated every single second of this movie.
Yeah. I I don't know if I hated every second of the movie, but I was confused for most of it, which I'll explain. Um, but because there were things that I think I sort of liked, but it was more once I got to like the middle part, and then particularly once I got to the end, I I I didn't hate every second, but by the end I felt insulted. I felt what a waste of my
Yes.
time. What a waste of a movie. What a waste. Just what a waste. Just what
Insult
a
on my
waste.
intelligence, insult because to me nothing in this movie was surprising to me.
No.
Nothing in it was
Wait,
refreshing.
nothing was
Nothing.
surprising.
Well, I actually was more annoyed with the 3 scenes than anything. Because if you take away those 3 shocking scenes, you're
Yes.
really left with nothing. There's no meat to the story. It's very predictable. There's no likable characters, at least to me. There's no
Yes.
likable characters.
No.
And I at the end of it, I just didn't care. I really
Yeah.
just didn't care. for at towards the end of the movie.
Yeah. Do you need, because this is an interesting topic, I think. Do you need your film to have likable characters though? Like, because I
No,
mean, what is it about these likable? What is it about these particular characters that even though they're unlikable, you like you still don't feel anything for them? Because I'm thinking about shows like Peep Show or Succession that are just filled with unlikable characters, but you are for some reason or another compelled and interested and invested in them. Why do you think it doesn't work with Saltburn?
I am also pro villains. So
Yeah.
it's not that they're unlikable. You can have somebody who's despicable, who's just a pure villain,
Yeah.
like you're mentioning with other shows, and they can still be a favorite, right? They can still be a favorite for as a character. You can and still enjoy their story.
Yes.
For me, there was no depth to any one of these characters.
No.
There was no like it's not that I did not like them or like them. I just didn't care. I
Yeah.
just didn't care.
Yeah.
Didn't care. Because
Yeah.
sometimes you root for the villain. Well, at least I
True.
do. Sometimes I root for the villain. I'm like,
Totally.
yeah, oh, just stab him, whatever.
Yeah.
But this, I go away from it, and there's not one single character that I really would care to know the lore behind, to even
No.
to have flushed out.
Yeah. I think the problem for me when it comes to the characters, and I'm sorry, just I like this comment from Chris, more like
Yeah.
salt
Oh,
burns in my
he
eyes.
never he didn't watch it. He didn't watch it at all. I've been
You're
trying.
lucky.
I have to rewatch it because I'm talking about it next week, and I'm like, "You should
Oof.
watch it with me so I can record your
Yes. Oh
reactions
my
to
god,
those 3
yes.
scenes." Because I was trying to
Yes.
describe the 3 scenes to him, and he didn't want details. He's like, "Nope." No, he would walk away. But I'm like,
Can't even
"Chris,
compute.
let's
Can't
do
even
this."
compute. I think one of the other things is when it comes to these characters being unlikable and also having zero interest in them is that one of the film's major problems for me was that there was zero motive for anything.
Yes.
No motive whatso bloody ever. I
The
it
poor
it
man's
blew it
talented Mr. Ripley. Yep.
yeah, it blew my mind that I'm just like, "Wait, why is this happening? Why is he doing this? What do they mean by this?" There was a lot of questions that from a writing perspective that I just kept thinking these should be questions that like they have to be answered, right? Or they have to be intentionally not answered. Like there has to be something going on to explain and play with some of this stuff because the lack of the lack of reasoning behind why people are doing what they're doing and this sort of balance of like the film is like mildly absurd but then also quite trying to be realistic at the same time and that balance to me was so off and it's off because the characters and what they're doing at one point is going way off the walls but then another point is being like is being super sensible at times like just what is going on but okay before we get into the story let's talk about some of the scene setting stuff. What did you think about the acting in general in the movie?
It was okay. I mean,
Yeah.
nothing was, and it was really disappointing because I like Richard Grant.
Yes.
I usually really like his characters in movies, and there was one scene particular that I was slightly moved by it, but it didn't overcome like my hatred for this movie. I
Yeah.
thought the acting was TV level acting, if that makes sense. Like
Hmm.
it was just like to me, I would be more surprised if this was I wouldn't be surprised if this was more of a HBO show or
Oh, I
something
see.
to
Hmm.
that extent.
Okay.
Not talking WB. I'll give them credit. They're not at WB level. But I'm
No.
saying I don't and for me I felt like they were going for more Oscar type acting. It just didn't work. Cuz it
Yes.
like I said
Sure.
before the show, it reminded me of very much of Euphoria. Very
Right.
much so. In the acting, the 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 dialogue, how people portrayed themselves, very much. And I don't know if this is just something because of Gen Z. This is the new thing for them. I'm just too old to understand this, but it felt very much so that this was just there was no depth to the dialogue. It was just
Mm-mm.
talk and reaction, talk and reaction, talk and
Yeah.
reaction.
Yeah. And I think there was this is where it's like quite I think part of where my frustration was coming from in this movie is that in general I liked the acting. I thought everyone was fine. No, again, no like no performance blew me away,
Yeah.
but it was well acted. I think the actors did well with what they had, right? I think. I also think there were interesting lines of dialogue and interesting conversations that were happening, and even interesting things that were happening, but none of it made any sense.
Yes.
Which is what was I was like, what's the thing that's holding this together? And it's like the way I explained it to a friend once was it felt like, you're looking at, let's say you're looking at a painting, but you're only looking at like a small section of a painting, and this little section is interesting. And then you move up, and this little section is interesting. This little section, but then when you step back, you just see like a cluttered mess. And it's like, oh, but that bit was cool, and that bit was cool. But then the whole picture is a mess, and that's kind of the way I felt with this movie. I was like, and it was a shame because, it came recommended. I thought I was gonna like it, and then I didn't, and it made me sort of, in some ways, like, be sort of, I don't know, sort of like dislike the actors because it just felt so
Felt like a high
pretentious.
school play to me, to be honest, or a college
Oh,
play.
ouch, 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 ouch.
I
I
I I I
Ooh,
again, I there are movies that I've liked of a couple of these different actors. I really liked the director's other film,
yes,
but I just I I think they tried to go too over the top with everything.
yes,
At some point, you have to hit a threshold, guys. It's
yes.
like, reel it in just a little bit.
Yes. So okay. So for you, okay. So it's kind of like for you, it's like this is like amateur hour, at the local theater. Is it? Is there a particular character that was doing that for you the most, or a particular or a group of them? Because when you say that, I think of the sort of hyper performances by Rosamund Pike and Richard E. Grant. They are
Oh,
they're sort of slapstick. They're sort of they're the ones who kind of take things to the absurd level with the way they interact and respond to certain situations, and sort of feel, kind of out of this world in a way where it makes me wonder if you were watching a film, like, this is a weird analogy, but you watch a film like, Coneheads or like The Burbs, and you have your kind of rooted in reality people, but then you have this one sect over here that is the absurd, and it's a clash between those that make it fun and interesting. And is it, and I think for me one of the problems is that I didn't get that interesting or fun clash between, the kind of the upper middle class, or kind of whatever, super upper class that they are, and the kind of lower class that is meant to be, Oliver Quick.
I can see
Yeah.
that. To me, they come across that they're in the wrong era. They would make more sense to me to be the typical rich in a period piece where
Okay.
that kind of slapstick, just,
Yeah.
they, don't have to worry about anything. But I don't feel like it fits the settings of the 90s, 2000s that this is set in, I think, because
Mm.
I know they were reading a Harry Potter book at some point.
Oh, yes, yes, it takes place in 2006-ish, that
Yeah.
era. Yes, yes.
And to me, I'm like, I don't think that's how the rich acted during now, but to me, it would fit more so if it was a period piece.
Mm.
I really couldn't stand Farley, Archer, what is it? Mad
Yes.
Q,
Yeah.
sorry if
Mattakey,
I
maybe?
I thought
Maybe?
he was phoning it in really, really hard.
Yes.
And obviously the lead, Barry. I don't get it. I
Yes.
don't understand from the get-go, because to me it should have been, you should have sympathy for this character and then slowly start to see through his mask of his what his intentions are, right? He's
Yes.
supposed to come across as poverty stricken, doesn't have any money or anything.
Yeah.
But even before the reveal of that he comes from an upper middle class, I did not believe it for a second.
Yeah.
I saw right through it. I
Yeah.
had no sympathy for this character. I was
Yeah.
just waiting for the ball to drop.
Yeah. Yeah. I sort of wonder if, because there were elements, kind of started to kind of backtrack mildly. There were some elements of the way Rosamund Pike's character, Elspeth Catton and Sir James Catton, the way that they were acting, there was there was a sort of out of touchness to them, but I there is an element of that because I live in the UK. For those who watching that don't know, I
Oh, is
live
this
in
how the British
yeah,
people act?
I live in and kind of there is an element of the more rich you are, the more out of touch you are, at least here.
Okay.
Whereas I feel like you watch something like Succession, and those kids are in some ways out of touch, but they're also in touch, right? Like they live in another world, they live in another sphere,
Are
but
they in touch or are they just in touch with what's going on social media?
who? Who do you mean?
Because, you could say such like with Secession,
Yeah.
they're
Yeah.
rich, they're out of touch, but they're in touch, but are they really in touch, or are they just in touch with what is perceived as to
Right.
be
Okay, yes.
normal by social media?
Yes. Yeah. I think that a little I think probably more with that, but they kind of felt more out of touch, you know, in this crazy world, but I believed them and could relate to them. Whereas with with these people, the super rich in the UK are, I think, really hard to relate to.
Hmm,
Almost in any way. And I've met some people who sort of belong to this group of people. I remember I'll tell you a story because who the fuck cares? I was I met I was yeah I was living somewhere and was visiting a friend and they had some family over and they quite wealthy, this friend of mine, um and this family that they brought over, the son of theirs works in banking, right? And we're talking
okay.
like big banking stuff, like you know, he's not just like down at your local branch, right? And I was talking to him, finding out a little about what he does, and then I turned to his wife and I was like, "Oh, so well, you know, what do you do?" And she's like, "What do you mean? What do I do?" I was like, "I mean, what's your thing? Do you
I
do?"
wish I could answer like that. Chris, I know
Right?
you're watching.
And then when and then when they left, my friend was like, "Oh, yeah, she doesn't do anything. She just her thing is, you know, she goes to the expensive stores and buys clothes all day long." Like
Chris.
the top of the line places. And you so you kind of get this like you can get this very out of touch. And it's also all anyone has to do is go look at like any clip of the last like four prime ministers that this country's had, and you can see how out of touch the super wealthy are because they're the
Well,
ones who
even
yeah.
your royal family too. Not to knock
Yes.
your king.
No,
I'm
knock them all we want. We don't
you
need the
know,
royals anymore.
I
They
don't need
are
I don't need, British people coming after me, but I'm just saying, I liked your queen, but,
yes, yes.
yes, your
We're
king
done. Move
yes,
on with the Royals. We no longer need it. We no
yeah,
longer need it.
yeah.
Yeah, so for me, there was an element of sort of kind of believability, but also there was a bit of a hyper element to it. It was just for me because they weren't letting that clash feel interesting between Oliver's character and this super rich family. And then if for me everything felt a little phony.
Who
But
was
we'll
this movie made for? That's what I wanna know. Just
no clue.
I have no because I can't tell if it was meant for because it takes place more so for where millennials were younger,
Yeah,
but to
yeah.
me, I didn't as a millennial, didn't relate to any of the characters.
So my
So
wife could a little bit. So
Gen
my
Z
wife went to Oxford
okay.
and went to Oxford at that time. So she could relate to certain aspects of it. Because there very much is, I mean, classism is a massive thing in this country. If you don't come from, you know, a noble family, you know, a long-standing family, you know, it's very hard. You can't really get into that. Unlike the States where it's a little bit easier, where you can sort
Mhm.
of work your way up to the top in some ways. There's still classism within the States, but classism in the UK is absolutely, and in Britain, in Europe really is absolutely absurd.
Yeah.
If you don't come from this long-standing line, then you're you know you're basically dog shit. You can come from the States as a wealthy individual, but if you're, it's almost like kind of thing like Great Gatsby, like new money versus old money. Um, there's the old money will not like they don't like to tango with new money, like
Okay.
at all. It's a very weird dynamic because it's so different, I think, to the way money and wealth. What the fuck is this? I don't.
Why do
It's
you have
it's
bal
it's some sort of graphic that comes up when you make a hand movement, and I don't know how to turn it off. It's really annoying, and I need to find out because, like, Jesus Christ. Ah, what was I saying? What was I
It's
saying?
okay. Let's move
Anyway,
on.
so yeah, sorry. So at Oxford, you can definitely have people like Oliver who are there and are there whether on scholarship or whatever. Um and then you do have the super wealthy group of people, but realistically getting in with that crowd is virtually impossible. Like it's just a completely different world even within the kind of the posh elite world of being an Oxford student. There's this sort of hierarchy because, oh well, you went to that kind of school, well, we went to this kind of school. So
Okay.
yeah, so that's there were elements of it that worked. And for example, the tutoring scene towards the beginning, where Oliver's like, oh, I read all the work for the summer, and the tutor's like, oh really, wow, and he's being a bit flippant about where he lives. He's like, he doesn't know where, it's just somewhere in the north. um like my wife experienced and witnessed those sorts of interactions.
Okay.
Um, so some of that stuff was authentic, but it just it but the big question was just, why is it here? Where is it going? I thought, that tutoring scene, I thought, okay, well, there's gonna be some sort of interesting Oxford conflict, and then poof, you know, we're gone. We never see that tutor again. And I'm like, why did we even have this scene with the tutor then? If he's not going to be, if he's not a character in the story, if he's just here for one scene to accomplish this, for him to be kind of derogatory, I guess, towards Oliver. Uh, Other than that, what does it accomplish?
Mhm.
And I kept feeling like that with every single character we kept getting introduced to. Um, for example, when they're at the dinner scene in at Oxford, right? He
Mhm.
goes to the hall where they're all sitting down, and he sits across from that mathematician, that math student, and he's like, ask me a question." And he's like, no, I don't really care. He's like, ask me, and then he like yells across the table, ask me a fucking question. And I mean, it was one of those things where it's like, okay, this is for me where this film is going into absurd territory, because I just don't see that happening.
Yeah.
And when
Yeah.
you do something so loud like that, you're it's very jarring. But again, what was the point of that character?
Yeah.
Math
Because
student
after
comes
he
and goes.
left. Yeah,
Yeah, it
after yeah, yeah.
was
I
nuts.
To me, the setting stage of Oxford could have been anywhere. They could
Sadly,
have
yes, true.
they could have literally been anywhere, which I think, uh, it's sad because they could have used Oxford to kind of flush
Yeah.
out all the characters,
Yes.
you know?
Yeah.
Um, I don't understand if the end result was to be at Saltburn and for Barry to want Saltburn, then why did we spend the first half of this movie at Oxford?
Yeah. Yeah.
And at least if you're gonna do that, spend a little bit more time on the characters there. Plus the
Yes.
ones that are going to follow you to Saltburn,
Yeah.
instead of just introducing all these random characters
Yeah.
like it's a Harry Potter movie. I mean,
Yes.
you know, it's
It's
the
yeah.
best example.
Yeah, no, it's true. It frustrated me that first hour, because it's about an hour, maybe 40 minutes of the film is all taking place in Oxford. And about that point in, about 30, 40 minutes in, 'cause I watched it with my wife and another friend. They were both almost simultaneously saying, I'm waiting to find out what this movie is.
Yeah.
Is this meant to be some sort of drama? Is it meant to be uh, a horror? People have said it's meant to be a horror-ish kind of movie, um in the way like Parasite is horror, right?
Yeah,
Right.
but Parasite comes across, there's actual horror in it, horror scenes, like scenes
Yes.
in Parasite that could come, that you could label as horror.
Yes.
There's nothing in this movie to me that comes
The
off
horrible
more so
scene.
like a thriller, maybe like
Yes. Yeah.
a very, watered down thriller, but
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't see horror
Yeah.
anywhere in this
Yeah.
movie.
Yeah, so I mean, we're everyone's just sort of we're sort of waiting for like to get some sort of idea of what this is meant to be. What is it trying to say? We're going through, quick montages in Oxford to sort of explain relationships and make believe that like this is why they're best friends, Oliver and Felix. But yeah, but for me, it was just like I couldn't, I just didn't care enough because the movie wasn't letting me care at
I
all.
hate I hate when people say this, but I am gonna say this. I think this would have been better as a show. I hate when people say that about
Well,
movies because movies should you should
would it
be
though?
able to write it out. You might be able to flush it out more. Like the first half of a season, you're at
Mm,
Oxford, you're flushing out these characters, the relationship there. You start to see the cracks in Oliver. Like you start off with, feelings, a sympathetic character that you feel sorry for, that just
mm,
wants to fit in. And then you start to see the cracks. And then halfway through, you end up at Saltburn. And even 2 seasons, you could split this into 2 seasons easily, but
mm.
it's compacting it into, what is it, like a 2 hour, 2.5 hour movie.
Yeah,
But
it's like 2 hours
at
and
the same
15
time,
minutes.
I still don't understand a single one of these characters' motives
Mm-mm. No.
or personality
Yeah,
or what they want in life.
yeah.
Like, or I just don't care.
So maybe to give people context if they haven't seen the movie, so you have the character Oliver Quick played by Barry Keoghan, whatever, however he pronounces his name. He is he's studying at Oxford University. He's a scholarship student, which means he doesn't come from money. He tells everyone that his mother is an alcoholic and that his dad is in prison. And for some reason, he is ridiculously obsessed with this other character named Felix Catton, played by Jacob Ellerdy, and you are left wondering the entire time why.
Yeah, because I don't understand the how it went from an infatuation with Felix to wanting to, spoiler alert, to wanting to own Saltburn. It
Who
just
knows?
it
Yeah,
it didn't make sense to me.
no,
There was no correlation there. I
no,
could understand from if you put a motive from the very beginning that he's
yes,
obsessed with Saltburn. Maybe he's got, a wall full of Saltburn photos of
yeah,
the property, and he knows the history about it and everything.
yeah.
But to me, there was no drive to say this character wants this property.
Yeah, no, it didn't. The property, the whatever his end result never didn't make sense because again, it's easy to compare this movie to the Talented Mr. Ripley, which is a good book and a good film. And I rewatched the film after watching Saltburn as a palate cleanse, which was wonderful. But you very quickly understand the character of Ripley. It's very obvious. It's straight away. One, the first scene that we see with Ripley is he's playing piano, and people mistake him for being from Princeton, which then connects him to the main story of the movie where he needs to go to Italy, I think, and find this rich guy's son and convince him to come home. Um, and we find out that he's good at imitations and he's good at faking signatures, and he kind of he can be sort of chameleon like. We understand that really quickly from Ripley in the opening few scenes of the movie. But then also once Ripley is hanging out with, I can't remember the guy's name who Jude Law plays in A Talented Mr.
Been
Ripley, but
a long
yeah,
time since I've
yeah.
seen it.
But Jude Law's character, you very quickly begin to understand that Ripley is becoming obsessed with Jude Law's character, and there is a sort of almost homoerotic element to his infatuation and wanting to sort of run away with him and live this lavish life with him and take his want his life and take his life, and everything in it, and that just continues to escalate and escalate and escalate to the point that Ripley eventually murders him and then takes his identity, and things start spiraling out of control, and he has to keep murdering people so he doesn't get caught. And you really you understand where this is going and why it went there. Um, but with Saltburn, like you said, we have this kid who is claiming to be this poor dumpy scholarship student, who eventually in the movie we learn is maybe not as true as what he was saying. um so then you're like, well, why have you lied about everything? Why lie, and why do you want, as you said, what do you want? Because I never felt that he wanted Saltburn. um I never understood why he was infatuated with Felix. And it was just like, because the thing is, the way the movie set it up, his infatuation really probably should have been with the cousin Farley,
Yeah.
because he's the first guy that he meets in that tutorial, and you're sort of like, okay, they're gonna be the ones. They're
I
gonna
thought
have
he was going to replace Farley. I thought
hmm,
that was the
that
direction
too. Yes.
initially, that Oliver, wanted to get rid of Farley so that
Yeah.
he could be Felix's right-handed man from now until forever. Like,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
he was going to replace Farley. That's initially what I thought was going on here,
Yeah.
but no.
This movie is incredible at setting things up that never come to fruition.
Yes.
Um, that that bit is one of them. There's other bits throughout the movie where early on the math student who it says who shouts at Oliver's character briefly. I guess they become friends for some reason. And they hang out at the pub. But then eventually Oliver ditches him. And again, you're sort of like, the convenience of that scene in the pub where Oliver ditches the math student and then finally gets in with Felix and them, just felt so absurdly convenient.
Yes.
How like to me was just dumb. It was just stupid. But yeah, so you have that being set up, but then you have these breadcrumbs being dropped that Felix apparently, you know, had another one last year, as in had another poor student who was a friend of his. And
But we
you're
never know who, but there's
we
no,
never know
yeah.
who, and we never know what happened. But like the math student makes a comment, says he'll dump you like he dumped the last one. And you're like, okay, mystery, interesting, intrigue. Let's find, oh, nothing. Okay.
Mhm.
Because and they do bring it up once at Saltburn. The sister makes an off the cuff comment about the same thing. Um, but again, you're like, okay, I don't really understand what's going on with this bit of story. We're not exploring it. It's not revealing anything about Felix. We're not finding out anything sinister about him, because really ultimately the character of Felix, he's not a bad guy. He
No, he's
doesn't really do anything awful. His cousin is a jackass. His sister is a bloody weirdo. But he himself, I don't remember seeing him do anything or feeling like he's being nasty. I'm like, he's even his parents, though they were kind of out of touch and being very snobbish at times. I'm like, even they were kind of nice people, because they were letting Carrie Mulligan's character crash at their place for a really long time. Obviously, they were sick of her being there, but they were trying to be as polite as possible about being like, you need to get out and move on now. And then they were very polite to Oliver's character by letting him stay there for as long as they did, and
even after
yeah,
Felix kicked him back.
making him a
Yeah.
part of the family and stuff. And you're just sort of like, because I remember one of the big kind of comment people were
Is it
saying on social media was like, "Oh, this is a movie about how sticking it to the rich people and how terrible they are." But I'm like, these people were, Farley was a jackass and his sister was nuts, but Felix was fine, and his parents, though out of touch and absurd, were also rather nice.
were they nice, or they were avoiding confrontation?
Either way, they weren't vicious.
I would say, like, I again, I don't know much about British culture,
Yes.
uh, but it comes across being rude is somewhat looked down upon from what I've
Yeah.
seen in movies and stuff. So, like,
Yes,
is
you
it
sort of sidestep. There's a lot of
Yeah.
subtext. You don't really say what you mean in this country, whereas Americans do, and that's why I get in so much trouble here because I'm just like American, and I'm very like, "This is dumb," and they're like, "Oh my god, how dare you say that?"
Yeah,
Um,
I've seen the Seinfeld episodes. We say
yes,
pardon. Yes,
yes.
yes. Oh, thumbs up.
Apparently that works. Yeah, whatever, whatever.
So to me, I don't know if they come across as nice. I think it's more of an avoidance of confrontation that it
Sure.
in leaving subtle hints of like, oh, you should, you
Yes,
know, pay
yes.
like pardon, like
But
go on your own. But I agree, they're not malicious. There's no ill intent.
no.
I think Felix is just not a very intelligent character.
Yeah,
Just
no,
he's just
no.
but I
Nothing
mean, at
to
that
him.
age in 2006 and you're at Oxford and you're young and
Yeah,
you have access to any amount of drugs and
yeah,
partying and stuff. So, it
yeah,
I don't think he's I just think he's just not caring. It doesn't come off caring. He doesn't like I don't think he would take a bullet for Oliver in a sense or
no,
call Oliver
no,
his best friend,
no.
but he likes the attention. He likes having people around him. He likes people who are happy
Yeah,
around him.
yeah.
Uh not and so I kind of agree with you. Well, they don't
But
have
take
they're
the
nice, but they're not, accommodating.
I think they're very accommodating.
Well, I meant as they're nice, but they're not how do I say this? They aren't mean, but I
Yes.
don't find them to be overly nice,
No,
at the
they're
same
not nice
time.
in the traditional like, "Oh, they're very pleasant individuals,"
Yeah.
but they're nice what I mean by nice is that they've let these people come into their home, live with them,
Yes.
recharge if they need to, and that to me is like, okay, well, there is an element of charity, and the other
But
thing
is it
is
a badge of charity where I
maybe
give to charity because I want to,
yes,
instead they give to charity so that they can say, "Look, see, I gave to this charity. I gave,"
yes,
it's a spotlight on
yes.
them.
But I guess the problem is the film never explains it or explores it. So Carrie Mulligan's character had been sort of if we were seeing her as being this toy that they're just kind of batting about as the poor person who lives in the house, fine. Or if they were doing that with Oliver's character, being the poor kid that they're batting about, and having fun with, but they never do that, and that's where it's like, well, then what is the motive here? What is going on, and why? It was odd. It was just bizarre to me. So I really didn't quite buy any of that kind of narrative online where people were saying that, oh, this is about sticking it to the rich because
I
like
didn't come across at all to me.
no, no,
Because none of the rich people were actually any of the would you consider a villain? Even Farley, yes, he's an asshole, but
yeah,
he's struggling on his own. He's trying to find his spot in his family.
yeah.
There's,
I mean, even
a
actually,
lot of
even
issues.
Farley, they're paying for his education because
Yeah.
his mom is a fuck up.
Yeah, so they're very nice people, but and Oliver is supposed to be the villain, right? He's supposed to, but he comes from poor. I mean,
Yeah.
eventually you find out he doesn't, but I don't really think it's a sticking it to the rich kind of movie.
No, it's odd.
Mm.
And kind of speaking to other things that they sort of set up and then never explore again. It was on to me once they get to Saltburn and he meets the butler for the first time, played by the guy from
Paul Rees, Duncan,
yes.
yeah.
Yes. Once they get there and and we're introduced to him, he comes across as Duncan is the character's name. He's very, very menacing. And you think that there's something up with him. And you think that he's going to be some kind of murderer or something. And then he's nothing. Like
He was to me the most
nothing.
interesting character because to me his loyalty doesn't fall to the family. His loyalty falls to Saltburn. So I
Mm,
think that's why he was okay with towards the end where there was I really thought there was going to be a confrontation between him and Oliver. I
mm,
really thought at least after Felix kicked the bucket, like there was going to be some sort of confrontation. Because there's a scene where they come across each other, they stare each other down, and I really thought something was going to come across
Yes.
from that.
Yes.
But I
Yes.
think the character itself, Duncan, doesn't have loyalty to the actual family, but
Mm,
loyal to the property. So it didn't
yeah.
matter to him if Oliver owned the property or if this family owned the property. He just wanted to make sure Saltburn itself, the essence of Saltburn, the property of Saltburn was taken care of.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I agree with you. Again, a missed opportunity. Where was the confrontation that was built up
Yeah.
for this?
Yeah. Yeah. Because then the other thing, did you what was the first big gotcha scene? Let's talk about the gotcha scenes. The first big like shocking scene, if I remember, is the bathtub scene, isn't it?
Yes.
And
People now make like drinks. They
oh,
name it Saltburn bathtub, or they make it. They name it Felix's bathtub. I don't know. Whatever. They
vile.
they make like cocktails to look.
Vile. Um, so yeah, there's this scene where Oliver, and this is where I was like, okay, maybe the film is now going to start going somewhere. Maybe it's now going to start. We're going to start learning more about Oliver. We're going to start learning his real motives, whatever they are. Because I never feel we ever understand Oliver's real motives. We see
Yeah,
him gain some stuff, but at no point do I feel like I know what he is about. But this is the first thing I thought we were going somewhere. And this is he's very voyeuristic, and he's watching Felix's character take a bath and jack off. And you're like, okay, okay, it's and it's interesting in that it is sort of a sleazy version of Mr. Ripley, Talented Mr. Ripley.
mhm.
There's a bathtub scene in that. And that's when I started thinking, wait a minute, it's like that James Cameron meme where he's like, I'm seeing things that I recognize, when he's talking about Terminator Genesis. And I feel like that was this. I was like, okay, this bathroom scene is more or less the same kind of thing. And that is you have Ripley and you have the Jude Law character. Jude Law character's in the bathtub, and Ripley is wants to get in the bathtub. He says it, can I get in with you? And he's like, oh no. And he's like, Jude Law's character's like, fuck off, no. And he's like, oh no, I just meant like not like with you, and I just want to get in the water while it's warm. And he's like, oh, okay. And then he's staring at Jude Law get changed and all that kind of stuff. And so it's like, okay, this scene didn't really accomplish anything. It just was him watching him jack off, and then as the water is draining, he sticks his face in the draining water and starts slurping it up, and then starts licking the drain. And part of me is thinking, okay, he's insanely obsessed with
With
this
Felix,
Felix
yeah.
character, but then that's the only kind of like sexual-ish
Yeah,
fetishy
nothing.
moment that happens between them two. Never again does anything happen.
Yeah, nothing leading up to that to me told me that he was romantically obsessed with Felix. Like
The only
I felt
reason,
there was an obsession to
mm,
be part of Felix's inner circle, to be, to be in the same ranks, but I never came across it being sexual in any manner prior to
interesting,
that.
interesting.
Um,
But what about the beginning of the movie though? Because the beginning of the movie is a voiceover where he was basically saying, "I was in love with him, I loved him," and it was very
but
sort of homoerotic.
but I feel like can't men love each other without it being homoerotic? Can it be a
They can, but the subtext when we were watching it, the subtext was reading, okay, he's gay and he likes this
yeah.
guy, and I was like, I didn't know if Felix was going to be gay, or if that was going to be part of the drama. Um, but no, none of it mattered.
Yeah, it did. I mean, I I I don't I don't understand I've watched many videos trying to explain the bathtub scene, and I laugh every single time because to me there's no meaning behind it. I don't find a reason why
Mm-mm.
it to me it would have made more sense if he just like barged in on Felix and then maybe they had a scene together, or maybe
Yeah,
tensions are high and
yeah,
shoot your shot. But to slurp up Felix's bathwater and
yes,
mixed with that, I who is this for? Like,
yes.
why? Why? What
Yeah.
was the purpose of it?
Yeah, because I kept saying, what I said after watching the movie is, like, all of these scenes, they're not they're shocking and they're grotesque, but they're not necessarily bad scenes, right?
They're
In
not,
terms
but if
of
you
construction.
take it out of the movie, it doesn't do anything for the movie, especially
No.
this one. You take
Yeah.
it out, you're still gonna get the whole story
Yes.
from
So
start
I
to
was thinking,
finish.
I kept thinking, why, like, okay, you're having these shock moments that are basically the equivalent of cheap jump scares in movies like, uh, uh, what's those ghost movies that I don't really like? I can't remember.
Paranormal
Paranormal
Activity.
Activity. That's the one. They're a bit like that, where you're like, okay, yeah, this is just a big clap, a big loud bang for the audience to gasp at. Um, but, like, imagine if this was, again, I think the Ripley connection is interesting because, like, that scene meant something.
Mhm.
That you could see the tension between the 2, Ripley wanting something, Jude Law's character not wanting that thing, but and just that air of creepiness beginning to fester. Um, and I thought, okay, well, cool. That made sense though, because that was coming from somewhere and then it went somewhere. Whereas this, it was nuts to me that, like, right after this, you get the next big shocking scene, and Oliver's character notices that Felix's sister, what's her name? Is it Annabelle?
Benicia,
Venetia, that was it. Yes, Venetia is outside below his window, and he decides to go out and hang out with her, wearing nothing but a towel or something like that, like a towel like his boxers or something stupid like that.
she was just in a sheer white
Yeah.
nightgown, which I'm
Yes.
gonna tell you, any woman on her time of the month would not wear a
Yeah.
sheer white nightgown. I'm just throwing it out there.
Yeah, it's true, it's true, and it's interesting again because it's like it's evoking these sort of gothic imagery, which could be fun and could be interesting and could be worth exploring, but it goes somewhere that goes nowhere, and he sits down and talks to her, and he starts. This is like I think that might be the first big moment where we start seeing this new side of Oliver, because
Mhm.
the way he talks to Venetia is very domineering and controlling and manipulative, and you're like, whoa, where is this coming from? Because we haven't seen any of this. And again, this would have been stuff that would have been nice for them to have subtly dropped hints of during the fucking Oxford stuff.
Yep.
Like, getting to know, see him do some manipulation, see him do little things that you're like, oh, that's an interesting thing. And then we take it to this next, he takes his next step with Felix's sister. But again, the whole time he was kind of speaking with her, then like hitting on her and stuff. I just kept thinking the beginning of the movie kept saying how in love with Felix you are, and now you're hitting on his sister. Like, I don't understand your
S
motives, sir.
Sexuality is fluid nowadays, so any movie, it doesn't matter. Sexuality is no longer labeled you're straight,
Yeah,
gay, bi. It's like, especially younger generations, and you see this in shows like Euphoria,
right.
where there's not a label of their sexuality. They literally will just bang whatever, you know, comes
Yeah,
their way, in a
yeah,
sense,
yeah. I
like
mean, there's a little. I guess, like, again, if I think about, I'll use Doctor Who as an analogy because I'm a massive nerd. But like the Captain Jack Harkness character, right?
yes!
Like,
I
great.
love Captain Jack, but he's never labeled by his sexuality, even though he's a bisexual
Yes,
character, but prefers men,
true.
because
But
most of
you
his
also
long term, yeah.
but you understand kind of his character. You understand like his likes and
Mhm.
dislikes. Whereas with Felix, I was just like, I couldn't, obviously in the beginning of the movie, yes, he slept with that girl who slept with Felix. And you're sort of thinking, did he do that just because that's where Felix had been? You know what I mean? Like,
That's that's where I don't think there was a sexual love between him and Felix, where I think it honestly was an obsession love. Like
mm,
I don't think he necessarily wanted to sleep with Felix or be his part or his romantic partner, but he
right.
wanted it in some way to, for me, before we get into the whole like, oh no, it's not Felix he wanted, it was the property.
Yes.
It's to me it came across like, oh, I just want to be next to Felix. I love
Right.
him so much. I just want to be the person for him, but
Right.
not in a
Right.
sexual manner.
Right. Maybe kind of, but I think there's a particular scene in the movie that disrupts that way of thinking that we'll get to sooner rather than later. But yeah, Biffer in the chat mentions it, but we'll talk about that in a bit. Biffer does mention that was Oliver in love with Felix or the rich and the powerful? You tell me, man. The film doesn't know.
This is
I
why my
genuinely don't think
husband
the film knows.
this is why my husband should watch this movie. I think I need a non-biased point of view.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. But yeah, like what? Who is it? Who is it for? But anyway, with the sister, he then starts going down on her, and it's that time of the month, and so he's
Earning his
boom,
red wings, yeah.
yeah, and you're sort of like, wow, this is really shocking. This is really grotesque in a way. Like, don't be offended, ladies. Sorry, but like it's a shocking moment, right? Because you don't expect it. But then you're thinking, okay, where's this relationship going to go? Oh, fucking nowhere. Like I couldn't. It didn't because one in this conversation because he works out that she's bulimic, and he's like, tomorrow you're gonna eat your food and eat it all. Blah 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 blah. Blah. You're not gonna run away and go throw up. Da, 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 da. Um, but then and then the next morning at breakfast he's kind of sliding food her way, but what does she do? She literally walks off and goes away and probably goes and throws up. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
so what did any of that accomplish? Like, I guess it's like, okay, you're here to manipulate people, and that's becoming obvious at this point in the movie, but you don't know why. And it's like he never goes the full distance with his manipulation, and that really frustrated me because it's like, I don't know why you're doing all the manipulating. What do you want? I mean, we keep saying it, but it's like it's such an important thing with the story is you need to determine what that character wants, their wants and their needs, and how do they get them, or how is it taken away? How are they fighting for it? What will they do to get the thing? Like, what is it?
I'm very surprised too there was not a big confrontation between him and Farley because that to me
Yeah.
at least was set up at Oxford. It
Yes.
continued well Saltburn, but they never had a full-on confrontation between the two of
But
them.
they bang.
Farley, yeah, but they bang and Farley is sent away.
Yeah.
He's just sent away, and you never kind of get the end story for that. I
Yeah.
just, I just
The
okay.
the Farley thing was nuts because it was like, okay, he manipulates the situation. Oliver manipulates the situation to make it look like that Farley is going to be sell some priceless art that is in Saltburn. And you're all sort of like, they really turn pretty goddamn quick on Farley, like
Yeah,
really
they
quick.
trust
Like,
Oliver,
yeah,
who has like nothing to you have Farley who's been with you for years. You've seen this kid grow up, and all
yes,
of a sudden this stranger comes over during the summer, and you're gonna believe him.
yeah. I'd like, I didn't buy that for 1 second, not at all. But then, yeah, then he's sent away. And then, I mean, he makes a brief appearance at the birthday party towards the end, but when you get to the very, very end of the movie, what sort of didn't track for me was how Oliver got the property and where did Farley fit into that. But we'll talk about that when we get towards the end of the movie, because that was a scene that's like, okay, you're right. They needed a confrontation. They never got that confrontation, but for some reason they slept together, which just didn't like, why? I guess actually, take that back. The why was because I think he wanted to get Farley out of the house. So,
Mm.
thinking about it in this moment, that's probably the one thing that had, um that's the motive and the intent behind it, is that he wanted him out, and that's how he was able to accomplish that. But like, why did he go down on the sister? Why did he tell her to stop throwing up? What did he do anything more with that? No. Did they go any further with that relationship? No, they didn't. And that was really frustrating to me. Um, what do you feel about the relationship with the mom? Because there was a point in the movie where the movie tells you a lot. It doesn't show you almost anything. It tells you a lot. But
I
they kept telling us that they had a great relationship, and that Rosamund Pike's character, Elspeth, was just in love with Oliver, and they had such a cherished relationship. Where the fuck was that in this whole story? Did you see that at any point?
One scene where he hits on her in the beginning, where he
Yes.
compliments her appearance.
Yeah.
That's what they're basing that all off of.
Yeah.
I didn't because to me it would have made more sense if okay, you you get attached to Felix, you get invited to Saltburn, you want Saltburn. Uh, the mother, obviously, is looking at you, you're complimenting her. It would have made more sense if he had some sort of relationship with her, like an affair.
Yeah.
Something was going on behind the scenes, and that's how he can manipulate everybody, get everybody out, own Saltburn. Done.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't to me it didn't make sense when from that scene of him hitting on her to when he's much older and runs into her again. Obviously he plans it and she like falls for him again in a sense, or
Yeah.
or I don't know, makes replaces Felix with him because Felix
Yeah.
is gone at this point. But it's a weird relationship. I did not get a connection between the two of them.
No. No.
The
I don't
also
think
the
there is one.
chemistry wasn't there either between the
No.
actors. Yeah,
No, 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 no.
I really like Rosamund Pike. I like other movies
Oh, I do
she's in,
too. Yeah.
but her and Barry, I didn't feel had any real chemistry in
No.
the scenes that they were in together.
No, no, I agree. I didn't feel that either. Not at all. And again, this is what's kind of tricky is I think a lot of the actors in here are very good actors. I've seen them in other things where they've done really really good jobs. And I'm not really knocking any of the acting in this movie because I think it was good enough. I think it was good in general. I think your comment like HBO level sort of stuff that's probably accurate. I agree with that.
Which
But
is
there
very
was
sad
just
because she had a very fun. This cast is very good. This I
it
mean,
is.
it could have this movie could have been a pop culture icon. I think I really don't think people are going to be talking about this movie 5-10 years from now.
I don't think we've been talking about it in like 5 or 10 weeks or 5 or 10 days. I think we're like the last
Well,
people to be talking about it.
I think the only reason people are talking about it because it hit streaming. Prior to that, it was in theaters, and I don't remember it being such a hot topic. But then as
Nope.
soon as it hit streaming services and people started talking about,
Yeah.
and they don't talk about anything but those three scenes. That's
Yes.
it. That's
Yes.
all this movie is known for. That's
Yes.
it. It's not known for. So I've watched people like the coloring in this shot means that no, it doesn't. Stop it. You're all are lying. Okay.
Yes. I mean, I will just a brief thing on the cinematography and the shot composition. I think this is the problem with the movie and that it's it's made to make wannabe arty people feel like they are invested in avant-garde art
Yes,
when they're
it's
not.
it's pretty, but
Yes.
it's not. I don't this yellow filter that people have been using on movies.
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah,
can't stand it anymore.
yeah,
It just takes away from it. And to me, it's supposed to be set in 2006.
yep.
I don't see 2006. The only thing I see is a Harry Potter
But
book. That
but that's how you know it's 2006. There's all the Harry Potter books.
that's
The
it.
Deathly
Okay.
Hallows has just come out. It's 2006, remember? Yeah. Yeah. I guess the tricky thing is how do you when I think when you're setting something at a specific time, I think there needs to be a reason for why it's set at that time and why it's not set now.
Yeah.
I mean, the last book I wrote was for my PhD, which was set in 1923, is specifically set at that time for various specific reasons. It wasn't just an arbitrary date that I picked out of the hat. And I feel that is sort of one of the
Well,
problems here. It's like, well, why is it 2006?
lack
What
of
does
social
that?
media. Lack of it could be that. It could be the fact because in 2006 there was a little bit of hint of it, but it wasn't as it is now. So think if these
Eh,
characters had access to social media or access to the internet where you can search people
yeah,
and look people up. I
But
just
you
but it
you
would
still had well, hang on, you still had Facebook, you still had MySpace,
but Facebook at that
you still
time
had High Five.
oh, man. Facebook at that time, you had to have a college email address at that time to be a part of Facebook. It
And they're
wasn't
all in
open
they're all in college.
as it is. But nowadays, people spend what? Hours on social media? Back then, you might hop on, see something, and then you go,
You play
to the
Pirates versus
pool.
Ninjas and then you leave.
Yeah, you read a book, you do
You
something, you
you read
touch
Harry
grass.
Potter and the Deathly Hallows.
Yeah, you touch grass. You're not on, YouTube wasn't a big thing at that time
No.
either.
Yeah. Yeah.
Social media in general, it just wasn't a big thing at that time. So I could
What I
see maybe pulling away from that and
maybe.
putting a story where you can't how can you look up Oliver's I mean, nowadays you could type in Oliver's name and find out, oh, his mom works here, his dad's this, they live in this general area. You know what I mean? That
Yeah.
it could be
Super
easier.
stalkers could, but,
Yeah.
like, general people wouldn't, and I think general people wouldn't bother. I think the other thing is when you're, and this is, from what my wife has told me about her time in Oxford and her friends and stuff like that, is the amount of work that you have to do, like, you don't have time for shit.
Well, I mean, and not even at Oxford. You look at it when they go home for the summer. None of
Yeah.
them are on their computers or their phones or really doing anything.
Yeah.
They're all present. They're all doing activities and stuff. I'm
Yeah.
saying too much in Oxford, but I mean, if you're inviting, think of how much blackmail Farley would have if social media existed and finding things about Oliver, because Farley would be like, "Ooh,
Yeah.
let me look up this guy. Let
But
me."
I thought he was going to do that anyway because he knew that I think I felt the tutor at the beginning of the movie who was like, "Oh, I knew your mom. She was pretty fit. Really wish I would have tapped that, but I never did," which was a weird conversation to have at your first tutorial. Um, when he said that, I thought, okay, Farley now has an in with the staff to get information. Is he going to do it? No, because I guess he's stupid and lazy.
Lazy,
Um,
probably. Yeah.
because I
Probably
mean,
didn't think Oliver was a threat at that point.
but also think about it. What's his face? Felix found out the info. Felix found out where he lived and
Mhm.
drove him to his house.
Well, Felix found out where he lived because he called his mom or picked up the phone from his when his mom called
Yeah,
at some point and found
he
it
still
that
found
way,
out though. He still
but
found
not
out.
yeah, because he asked her for the
But like
address, you know?
the phones didn't have locks back then. So if Farley was super interested, he could have just picked up that. He could have stolen his phone. You know, made a
I
call.
I th I think so for me, the reason why Felix did that was because there was a little bit of resentment when he found out that there was a potential between Oliver and his sister, right? And
Mm,
Oliver kind of shot that down. So I
yeah,
think that kind of put a little bit of a seed in his head of his like something's off about Oliver, but
yeah,
I don't for sure. So I
yeah.
think that's why he picked up the phone when his mom called again, just to find out what was going on. I don't think if Farley had put in Felix's head the whole Oliver and Venetia thing, that
Mm,
Felix would have invaded Oliver's privacy and picked up the phone and talked to
yeah.
his mom, and then we get to this point.
Yeah, yeah, maybe. But then you're back to thinking, okay, well then what is Oliver's goals? What is it? What's going on? Like so for
A
example, like
bucket list, I guess? I
yeah,
don't
like
know.
what was the point of the mirror scene?
The mirrors. Oh,
Where he just breaks the mirror and then the next morning it's fixed and no one talks about it.
I think it was again, there's a lot I hate this movie so much because there is also potential for it to be a good movie. There's
Yes.
potential there.
There's a
There's
lot.
a
That's why
foundation,
it's so
and it's
frustrating,
just so
yes.
frustrating. I think him punching the mirror or hitting the mirror was just for us to as an audience to say something's not right about Oliver. There's something going on. There's something ill intent. There's malicious
Yeah.
here. There's something. I think that was for the audience, not
Mm,
so much part of the story.
yeah.
Uh, I don't know. I hate this movie so
I know.
much.
So the big reveal for those who haven't watched this movie is that
Spoiler alert.
the character of Felix takes Oliver to his parents' house, and now what we know so far is that Oliver's mom is apparently a raging alcoholic, And the whole reason Oliver gets invited to Saltburn is because he lies to Felix and says his dad has died. Um, and there's a whole kind of, touching scene between the two and blah blah blah. And he's invited to Saltburn. And that's what kicks all that off. So now he's doesn't tell Felix does not tell Oliver where he's going, and he finds out en route. And Oliver starts freaking out the closer and closer they get to his house. We rock up to Oliver's house, and it's a well-to-do, very nice house. That
Upper
house
middle
would not
class, I would say.
say again. Oh yeah,
Upper middle
definitely. That house would
upper middle
be
class,
that
like, it's
house would not be cheap. I mean, it's in the
yeah.
north, so it might be affordable-ish, but like it would not be that, small houses go for high prices in this country. So yeah, it's definitely would probably be close to £1 million, that house. So you're talking about well-to-do people, like,
Mhm.
sort of thing. We meet the mom, and she's perfectly nice and lovely. We meet the dad, who's apparently still alive and is absolutely fine. They mention Oliver's sister, who he lied and said he was an only child. And you have Felix and Oliver sitting on the sofa together, and Oliver is hunched over. He's acting very Asperger's y and awkward and weird. And Felix is just probing the whole time and be like, oh, finding out that Felix Oliver has been calling his parents and lying to them about like what his status is at school and how genius he is. And I think there's even a comment where he says something about being like a math genius or something like that. And it's
Mhm.
like, was he then also trying to steal that weird mathematician's life and what his accomplishments were?
I
Like,
think it was to
fuck
show
was that?
that he's smarter, again, it's the poor man's talented Mr. Ripley,
Yeah.
that he's smarter, that as an audience, we're supposed to now it's supposed to reveal to us that he's a mastermind, that
Yeah.
he's been knowing he's been planning all of his moves and everything to this, and I just yeah,
I
I
didn't buy it. That's the thing, is like I didn't buy it. I was
yeah.
like, when we got to that point, I was expecting like serious blow up. And then
I The only part of that scene I liked was how Felix was very calm and as if he was just
yeah.
visiting his friend's parents, like, "Oh, yeah, we'll stay for
Yes.
dinner. Yeah,
Yes. The thing that didn't track for me at all was the fact that he's like, I'm gonna drive you back to Saltburn. We're gonna still have the birthday party, but then you're gone. I would have been like, Mom,
leave you
Dad,
here."
this guy's a fucking fraud. He's been lying to us from the beginning. He's a fucking weirdo. He's gone. He's gone. You know what? I've left him at home. We'll ship his fucking bags to him. Fuck this guy.
Oh,
Like,
yeah, I would have left him there and said, "Mom, Dad, get his shit out of the house. Here's the address you can ship it to."
yeah,
Done.
because it
Yeah.
didn't make any sense to go through with the party. It just didn't make sense to me. Other than it was that scene with them in the car was effectively the scene of Ripley and Jude Law's character. I feel like an asshole not looking up Jude Law's character's name, but I don't care. It's that scene with them in the boat, we're out in the water, and they start arguing, and then Ripley bashes him over the head. Spoiler alert, bashes him over the head and murders him. And he's like, oh shit. And then that's when Ripley starts taking over Jude Law's character's life. Um, and so that's kind of, again, you're like, okay, well, this is imitating that scene. And if you've seen Towns Mr. Ripley, the Farley character is also very, very, very similar to the shit. Who's the villain from Mission Impossible 3? Famous guy, blonde hair,
Um,
dead now.
I know who you're
Um
talking about. Yeah.
I gotta look it up.
Ah,
Philip Seymour Hoffman.
yeah.
Philip Seymour Hoffman's character is in Talented Mr. Ripley is basically the exact same character as Farley. In fact, many times they have very similar confrontational or quasi confrontational conversations throughout that movie. In both of these. So it's kind of, again, I'm just like, okay, well, I've seen this before, but it's better over here. I've seen this scene, but it's better in this movie. And that's happening this whole time, and it's just becoming exhausting for me by this point. Who the fuck did he invite to his birthday party?
I think he just invited Felix's friends, it looked like, or just
Yeah,
invited Oxford, just the whole class. To me,
right.
that's
It,
what it
it
came
was
off.
weird to me. It was weird
Because
to me.
nobody knew who Oliver was, even at his birth when they were singing him happy birthday. They
Yeah,
didn't even know his name to say
yeah,
happy they're like, "Happy oh, Oliver,"
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
it's
Again, why? What is it accomplishing? Because like you by this point in the movie, you're thinking, okay, well, has he reached some sort of famedom? Like, what? Where is he in the social ladder now? Okay, he's still nowhere. He's still at the bottom.
Yeah, nobody knew who he was. No,
It's
no,
just so
Felix's
frustrating. God,
associated classmates didn't even know that Oliver was Felix's friend.
right?
Why
Is
have this
nuts.
birthday party, you know?
Exactly. Exactly. This is what makes me so frustrated. It's just like every scene, like you could literally do like a every frame a second pause with this, and just like literally be like, this is why this doesn't make sense. This is
Yeah,
why this doesn't make sense. This is why this, like, for example, the other scene, the scene very early on in the movie where where they call the Henrys, the neighbors come over and have a party, and there's that big dinner.
yes.
And like, what was the point of that?
I act
Not Barry. Well, Barry's character Oliver has that conversation with that woman to his right, and she can't remember how many kids she has and things like that, and you're like, okay, we never see them again. That conversation goes nowhere. That conversation doesn't have any.
I
That
will
whole setting has nothing to do with what is going on in the movie. It's just a thing that's here, and it's all meant to like lead to a karaoke moment that what's that Farley makes it's like, okay, well, you don't need all this other fluff. You could have just had them go to a karaoke bar, or just have family karaoke night. Like, wh- what the fuck
why?
is going on here?
Yeah. I did take a shot of that. I did take, I think you can kinda see it. I thought that was a beautiful shot, though, of him,
Trying to see. Oh, I see it.
yeah,
Yes.
where
Yeah.
he's, like, where it's a reflection of him in the table. I thought that was pretty
Yes.
interesting. But,
Yeah.
again, I was like, this I think there's too much symbolism in this movie to the point where
Well, it's too much ripping off of things.
people are just making up stuff
Yes,
in
yes.
this.
There for the Hobbit in the chat says, I thought it was like a party like a Gatsby or Babylon. Rich people, yeah, attract crazy.
I
Yeah,
haven't seen Babylon yet.
yeah. Babylon is a good movie. I really like it. I thought it was fun. I think people who dislike it, like, it's not a Hollywood circle jerk like La La Land is.
Never
Um,
seen La La Land.
I haven't either, but that's what I'm told.
Okay.
But La La Land, from I've watched a lot of reviews, and it is about kind of the glorification of old timey Hollywood, whereas Babylon, which is done by the same director, is entirely different. It's very sleazy,
Mm,
but great. But yeah, I mean, there was, I mean, yeah, there's definitely elements of Gatsby. There's definitely elements of Talented Mr. Ripley. There's really nothing original about this. It's
which
it's
is
I've nicked ideas, and I'm going to do shocking things, but it's not going to mean anything. But don't question me because I'm an artiste.
which is so interesting to me because the director, her other film, Promising Young Woman,
Mm,
uh, or female, woman or female, one of the two, it was a really kind of refreshing take on the revenge theory it's similar done. There's horror movies that have been played on this where a woman is sexually assaulted and then revenge is you fast forward and then revenge on those who have done it. It's a totally different take on the whole concept too, which I
yeah,
really enjoyed.
yeah,
So I was so surprised that this movie has just faltered left and right
yeah,
with going nowhere, with like laying the foundation for things, but just not letting things bloom.
yeah,
Just putting
yeah,
it there and just like, okay, let's move on to the next thing. Let's move on to the next thing. And
yeah.
that's why I think this would be better off as a 8 episode show because you could flush out those characters. You could flush
Mm,
out why he has an obsession with Saltburn. Because to me, like I said in the beginning, he says he's in love with Felix. But that if you're in love with Felix, then why was your end goal to own Saltburn? It doesn't make sense.
no,
It
because
just
his
doesn't
end
make
goal
sense.
wasn't
Or
to own it. He
if you're in love with Felix, why did you poison him?
Yeah.
Like what? Makes my
The
head hurt.
script to me felt like a first year creative writing student trying to be avant-garde.
Yes.
And it's just riddled with problems. Because the thing is, you can have a movie that sort of is plotless and it be really fun. Case in point, Napoleon Dynamite. I challenge anyone to tell me what the fuck that movie is about. Like, what is Napoleon's wants and desires? What's happening? It's just shit happening. Like, his life is disrupted when his uncle comes to town and he meets a new friend and helps him become class president. Like, that's kind of what happens. Like, even Napoleon Dynamite, but really nothing happens. But you can still sort of piece together, like, sort of the drama that's meant to be happening. But it's ultimately just a plotless movie, and you're just watching weird scenes of characters doing weird things and being funny. But I love Napoleon Dynamite. It's fun. The characters are funny and
Well, because it's
interesting.
yeah, it's flushed out. You
Yeah.
you actually care about the characters. There's
Yeah.
aspects of the characters that you relate to.
Yeah.
In some everybody's been that awkward kid in high school. Everybody, or
Yes.
at least everybody knows of that awkward kid in high school.
Yes.
Here, these students are beautiful individuals. They have they get to do whatever they want. Like,
Yes.
I would love to see what are their grades look like,
Yeah.
what challenges do they come across?
Yeah.
To be honest, there's no challenge in this movie. Even Oliver's want of Saltburn, it's not really a challenge because he comes
No.
from a well-off family. He could really realistically not need to own Saltburn or
No, I
to
mean,
be
the
involved
level
in
of
this.
richness of Saltburn is something he would never acquire in life, but he seems like he comes from a well enough family that he would not be living in a small, like,
He'd be
council
comfortable.
flat. You know what I
Yeah, and
mean?
he's smart enough that he could work his way up. He
Yeah.
could he could do a lot of things. It just there's no relatability to any of these
No.
people.
No. 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 It's shocking to me. So at the party scene, we finally go into the maze, which was set up early on. Which, again, whatever, that went nowhere. But Oliver and Felix have a conversation in the maze, and Oliver's like, "Oh, please don't send me away, please." Blah, blah. And he's like, "No, you're going away." But they both share they both share a drink of wine from a bottle. And Oliver takes a drink and then goes and throws up and leaves the bottle with Felix, who drinks from it. The next morning, we don't know where Felix is, and we find him dead in the center of the maze. And long story short, Oliver is the one who poisoned the wine, and that's why he threw up. I get, and yeah. So again, you're like, okay, so he murdered Felix because he didn't want to be exposed to the family and leave Saltburn.
But yeah, he was in love with Felix.
But yet he was in love with Felix, and even when he was having that panicky moment with Felix, I'm pretty sure there was some moments in that conversation where he was like coming on to him a little bit. Like,
Yeah.
there was some pretty heavy moments in that scene where I was like, okay, so he okay, right? But Felix was like, get off me, I don't like you. And you just sort of like, okay, all right.
Well, similar to Farley, where he used sex as a weapon, I think he was trying to utilize that as his
Yeah,
last resort with Felix. But Felix to me has always come across as a very straight male in this movie. Like,
he does.
yeah,
Yeah.
I don't think Felix dabbles. Sorry, guys.
No,
I
I
just,
didn't get that vibe from either.
mhm,
But like, you totally, like, 100%. If you, like, again, Townsend Mr. Ripley, there is definitely a homoerotic connection happening between Ripley and Jude Law's character, even though Jude Law keeps, like, saying no. Like,
mhm.
there's moments where you're like, there's
Will
some
they?
tension. Yeah,
Won't
yeah, there's
they? Kind of
yeah,
deal. Yeah, yeah.
definitely some tension. And then this is the film, again, after the death, goes right back to this kind of weird level of absurdity that's like David Lynchian, but like done by someone who doesn't understand David Lynch. Um and doesn't understand absurdity. So there's this weird lunch scene where everyone is having lunch and acting like everything is normal, while like the police are outside dealing with the body of their son.
Yeah, I've watched people break this down as it's it's because they are isolated in their own little rich bubble, so they don't know how to deal with the emotions of the fact that Felix's body is about to be rolled across, so they just want to keep normality happening.
Yeah, I didn't buy that.
I didn't buy it either. Believe me,
No.
I don't buy it either. I just didn't get it. I will say the one scene that I was like, oh, that's sad. was when Richard Grant's asked Felix where his jumper is over his
Yeah.
dead son's body. I was
Yeah.
like, "Aw,
Yeah.
that doesn't make up for the fact that this movie is a fucking I hate it," but I was like,
Yeah.
"That's sad." That got me. I was like, "Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
All right." But
Yeah.
yeah, and then I guess the reason it was red too just
Yeah.
again, too much symbolism in this movie for it
Yeah.
to matter.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
just yeah. Yeah.
I was totally, I mean, like, the police wouldn't have let them just sit in there and have dinner. They would have been
No.
talking to them. There would have been so much going on that I'm like, whatever's happening right now, it's just stupid and absurd and lazy and cheap, and uninteresting. It just wasn't interesting. It's like, this isn't interesting that we're all sitting here.
It felt
Um,
awkward to me. It
yeah.
cringy. I was
Yes.
cringed by it. I was like,
Yeah.
can we like get going? Let's get to the
Yeah.
next scene of it."
Yes. Yeah. And so then we get to a funeral scene, which I guess is the next big shock moment of the movie, where, and this is where it's like, okay, yeah. So basically everyone, they bury Felix, and Oliver is left with the grave that's just been dirt system placed over it. And I kid you not, before the scene happened, I jokingly turned to my friends and my wife, and I was like, and now he's gonna fuck the ground. Literally what I said. And then he got down on his knees, started crying and hugging the ground, and then he stood up, and then he dropped his pants, whipped his dick out, and started literally fucking the earth.
Which I have to ask for the I mean, dirt doesn't hold structure like that. Just I just never mind. Sorry. I didn't mean to be
Yeah.
crude.
I mean, my thought process when I found out that this scene was improvised, I imagined like the like health and safety people on set being like, to you, standing behind Emerald and being like, we don't have insurance for what he's doing right now. He's literally fucking the ground. We don't know what the fuck is in the ground. We don't
But
know what kind of, you
it
know,
it doesn't make
pesticides are in there
sense.
that's gonna like burn his dick away. Like, he can't be doing this. But she's like, let him, it's art. Let him. No, it's art.
I don't get it. It doesn't make sense to me why he would fuck the ground.
Because he was literally in love with him, and this is the
But
closest he's ever going to get to fucking Felix. That's it. This is why I'm like, he has to actually be in love with him. But then that's why it doesn't make sense, because why did you killed him for stupid reasons? You didn't actually come on to him earlier in the film, and then at the end of the film, you then say you hated him but you loved him. It's like,
pick a direction, dude.
come on.
Pick a
Come
direction.
on.
Yeah.
Like,
I when when I first watched this scene, I too I didn't again, no spoilers for me. I knew there was something to do with the graveyard,
mm,
but I didn't know it was this. Like
no.
I didn't expect this. Something I'm like, okay, all right, that's weird. It's starting to rain. Why is he taking his pants? Oh no. My
Yes.
Chris could hear me from upstairs. I'm like, oh no.
Yeah.
I don't get it. I don't
No.
get it. And
Blew my mind.
nobody's like, hey, where'd Oliver go? And walk back and see that? Like,
Right.
wouldn't he be worried somebody would see this happening?
I guess not. I guess not.
Duncan in the background, just watching him defile this grave.
Ugh, yeah, it's just so odd. It's such
And
just
then,
such a weird one.
and when I found out it was improvised too, he's like, yeah, I asked for a closed set and just let me
Yeah.
work my magic. W- w- I want to know what kind of drugs Barry
Yeah.
was taking,
Yeah.
because I cannot think as a normal human being. You go, you know what my character would do? It would fuck the ground,
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
because there's no other than the bathtub scene.
Mm,
I did not get any kind of like that type of sexual depravity of Oliver. I get,
mm,
yes,
yeah.
the scene
Sure.
with his sister, the bathtub scene and stuff, but I never to me it's because he's obsession with a person.
Yeah.
This is beyond that type of depravity.
Yeah.
I don't get it. I
No.
don't people can explain it with all the symbolism they want. Doesn't work. By the way, Jude Law's character's name is Dickie Greenleaf.
Dickie Greenleaf, duh. Of course,
There you
Dickie
go.
Greenleaf. God damn it, Dickie Greenleaf. Yes. Yeah. And then after this moment, the film is kind of starting to wrap itself up, and it just like speeds through stuff. Like the sister commits suicide after this.
Which I didn't understand. Was it because she was upset about her brother, or
Yeah.
what? Because in any of the conversation he had with her at that time, to me
Yeah.
it sounded like she knew what he was up for, what the
Yes.
jig was up. She knew what was going on. She wasn't
Yep.
going to let him do this,
Yep.
and then she commits suicide. That I don't. It doesn't make
Didn't
any
buy it.
sense to me.
Didn't buy it. Didn't buy it. And then the dad is like, "You need to leave," and he's like, "I'm not gonna leave." But he eventually leaves, and then we have this weird time jump where we've moved from 2006 to like 2022, and Oliver is sitting in a cafe, tapping away on his computer, and Rosamund Pike is, her character Elspeth is buying a coffee, and they run into each other. It's meant to be coincidence, but it's arranged by Oliver somehow, I guess. And then she's like, "Oh, house, sunburn is back. It's all there. It's blah, 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 blah." And then the next scene after that is like an undisclosed amount of time later,
Yes,
and she's on her deathbed.
which I don't understand. So did they have a relationship? What kind of relationship?
Exactly.
How did where I would have loved to see where did he get her to sign over and leave him
Yes.
Saltburn?
Yes.
And what was the conversation? What was the actions taken?
Yes. Exactly.
That would have at least saved the movie for me a little bit.
It would have saved a little bit, but not much.
Yeah.
A little bit, but it's kind of
Yeah.
like he's doing the villain like exposition at the end moment where he's revealing all of his tricks, and you come to find out that the scene in the pub early on where he was hanging out with Felix for the first time, and went to go buy drinks but didn't have any money. Actually he did have money, so I'm like, but in the context of the original scene, Felix thinks he's broke, goes over and pays for the drinks, and is like, again, it's a very nice thing for Felix to do because Felix seems to be a nice guy. So he pays for the drinks so that Oliver isn't embarrassed. But then we find out that Oliver did have money. I'm like, so how did he know in that moment that
I feel like
Felix was going to come over and pay?
yeah.
How did he know that? And then then there's this moment where we find out that the original kind of meet cute between Oliver and Felix is that Felix's bike has got a flat tire, and Oliver rides by, and they exchange bikes. And then you find out that Felix is the one who popped the tire, so he arranged that. But then you're thinking back to the question we raised earlier in this episode: is why Felix in the first place? Don't know, but he's arranged all of this
Yeah, because there's
for
not
some reason.
it would make sense if there was laid out in the beginning that the way to get to Saltburn,
Yes.
then result was to get to Felix.
Yes.
But there's
Yes.
no you don't know who Felix is, what his
Yep.
family is, or where he comes from until they leave for Saltburn.
Yeah.
S
I
eh
even I even thought something like his dad or mom works for a company connected to the family that like fucked his family over, and
Yeah,
that's why he's basically out for some
no.
sort of level of revenge. But nope, nothing. Like entire an utterly motiveless movie with utterly motiveless characters from start to finish, and it was so fucking frustrating. Particularly during that reveal bit, because I was just like, don't buy it, don't buy that, don't buy that, don't buy that. But then he gets on top of Elspeth on her deathbed and pulls out the breathing apparatus.
That was improvised too, by the way.
Okay, well, the doctors are going to be like, "Hey, sir, why is that on the floor?" Because that's not how you pull the plug if you're pulling the plug.
Yeah. I
So you are just going to get done for murder now because your fingerprints are going to be on that, and bada bing, bada boom.
Is this movie just meant for Gen Z? Because,
It's
nowadays
meant for morons.
people don't have attention spans. That's why
Mm.
it's like you gotta be quick with that's why TikTok's so popular because they could just scroll and that's why people watching movies on TikTok is popular too, because they'll watch like 10 minutes at a time. They just scroll through and they get like the
Yeah.
climax and they go. So I wonder if this movie is made for Gen Zs because there's no structural plot, but
Mm-mm.
it's like this scene and then this scene and
Yes.
then this is exciting and then
Yes.
this is shocking and all this. Yeah.
Yes. I think so, and that is a trend that, irritates the bejesus out of me because I remember, ages ago, I watched the film Birds of Prey, the Harley Quinn movie, and a friend of mine watched it with us, and, like, she was loving the movie, and, oh, she's like, "Oh, I love this scene. Oh, I love this scene." And again, it was one of those movies where it's like, in isolation, that film has a lot of fun scenes, but that film is fucking terrible. It's a structural nightmare.
Yeah.
There's no sense of plot. There's no sense of nothing. And I do think, yeah, I would say Saltburn is probably for the dummies of the TikTok generation, that can't think beyond 5 seconds, and just needs, they just want quick, shocking 30-second clips because that's all their little brains can handle.
Well, compare it, and it's not a similar movie, but compare it to you just saw Godzilla minus one. There's
Yeah,
structure there. There's a human aspect. There's a
yeah,
story,
yeah.
and there's time jumps in that movie.
Mm,
Fast forwarding,
yeah.
and you care about these characters,
Yes.
even though there's a Godzilla monster.
Yes.
There's an actual point A to point. This movie, there's no.
No.
I don't get it. And then the
Yeah.
rocks too. I don't understand the symbolism to that. I guess I don't
Mm,
know. It just
yeah.
and then him dancing naked through Saltburn. I mean,
Yes.
I get it. I guess everybody at some point has danced naked through their house. I haven't, but I mean, I
I've
get
never done that. The
just
the most ironic thing, and this goes back to the people who said this film was meant to be a big fuck you to rich people, is that there then became a trend on, of course, TikTok,
where rich
um,
people dance through their
of rich
mansions to
people
the
dancing
same.
through their mansions. And I'm like, and to me, it's like, this film is meant to be some sort of commentary about the arrogance, and the pompousness and whatever of the rich. Clearly that theme did not land because people see themselves as Oliver's character, and they're the successful ones at the end. It's like, okay, this is nuts to me. The other thing that was quite funny is about halfway through this movie. No, during the Oxford scenes. So, maybe a little ways in, maybe 30-ish, 40 minutes in. I was like, "You know what?" I was like, "I wonder if this writer director went to Oxford and had a really shit time."
Did they?
And I went to Wikipedia, and what do you know? Holy shit, Emerald Fennell went to Oxford. And I thought, some of this makes a little bit more sense to me because I get the vibe that, because there's a sense that, like, we're sort of meant to be Barry. He's our window into this weird world, and we're not meant to like this weird world, and we're meant to want it to crumble. There's a weird sort of, like, the film is kind of wanting you to go that route, but it's so messed up that you sort of just don't. I just don't buy it. But that I felt there was so much spite in this movie that I was like, this to me is written by someone who just really, it came across someone who didn't enjoy their experience at Oxford and wanted to, just needed some sort of cathartic, like, expression of their loathing for the rich pompous people who go to Oxford and are snobby to the scholarship students and people like that, because nothing else really made sense. That's the when people say, what's this movie about? I'm like, I think it's about the director just being frustrated about her time at Oxford, because and hating rich people, because
I
I
I
can't
don't
see anything else.
I don't get the whole sense of eat the rich mentality because
Mm,
99% of these people who say like, "Yeah, stick it to the rich." If you gave them $1,000,000, I doubt and you said, "Here's $1,000,000, Luke. Now give
yeah,
your money away." You're going to give it away?
no,
You're not going to set yourself
no,
up. You're not going to buy yourself a nice house. You're not going to utilize it. You're going to tell me you're going to give your money
exactly.
that your $1,000,000 to I mean, you maybe you give it to charity, maybe you do but you're not gonna keep some of it to live comfortably above your means? Like,
Yes, Biffer the Hobbit explains everything perfectly. The movie is about commies trying to start a modern French Revolution. I never
That's
saw
it.
that, but you know what? Dude, you're right. You're right. I love that. That's funny. This movie just
I can't wait till I debate it next week because
yeah. Where are you
I
debating it again? Tell the people.
I'll be on Zach's channel, What's Good Wednesdays. You could follow me on Nerd Doll Face. You'll see the update for it. I'll be debating my friend Vex. She liked the movie. While I was watching this movie, I was texting her, and there was a scene that let me see if I can find it. That I text her, and I was like, "What is this garbage?"
Well, I mean that could be applied to so many scenes in this movie.
It was this. Oh, you know what? I bet I have it as a
Biffer
video
says
that I
Zax is
saved.
awesome, so Biffer knows who Zax is.
Yes, I Zach's is very kind for me to be continuously on his show, and I appreciate it.
Awesome.
Oh, it's the uh honestly, but if I found the right boy but if she found the right boy or girl, I don't care anything. What was that? I was a lesbian for a while, but but it
Yeah.
was just too wet in the end for me. And I was, what? Why is this a why to me this character just so I sent that to and that what made her want to watch it, and then she
Yes.
turned out she liked it.
Yes.
Hey, art is
Again,
subjective, man. I liked Barbie. Half the people I know didn't like Barbie.
I mean, I
So
don't like Barbie for a lot of the reasons I mentioned in this movie, and that it's a structural nightmare. It's a thematical mess. Like, what is the theme of that movie? Barbie is weirdly a film that is weirdly anti-feminism.
but
It doesn't realize it, but I don't think it
it
realizes
is.
it, but it is.
To me, it's a story about Barbie choosing to be a mother and motherhood at the end. Uh,
Sure,
I have
maybe.
more of a emotional connection to that movie because it
Yeah,
relates to me with my mom and my upbringing and stuff.
yeah,
So I can get past the structure and I enjoy the movie. I own
yeah,
it. I loved it.
yeah.
But a lot of people didn't like it. A
No,
lot of them thought it was a man hating movie, thought like this is not a movie about a doll. What the hell is this? I get it. But this movie, I don't understand.
yeah.
I
No,
don't
I
understand.
don't either.
And
I go
oh,
on.
sorry. I like certain horror movies for shock value that I
Sure,
know structurally there's no story there, but damn, it's as good to watch this gore happen. I
sure,
get
sure.
it. But this movie, even with shock value, there's take the three scenes out. There's nothing.
No, no. And this is the other thing is I am perfectly fine to like bad movies and enjoy a bad movie, but I'm always of the opinion that I'm like you need to at least acknowledge that what you're like you need to acknowledge that what you're enjoying is a McDonald's hamburger. Right? You're
Yes.
not having a fine meal at a five-star restaurant. You're having fast food and this is fine, like, Marvel is fast food. I get it. People love it, whatever, but it's fast food. But you have to acknowledge that it's fast food, right? Like every once in a while you get a film that's like a special burger from those places, but like that's like slightly above the rest. But like it is what it is. And this to me was just like everyone is just wanking over this film. My tweet after watching it was this film was a pretend it was Saltburn was a pretentious wank of a film because like it just everything reeked of I need to be arty, I need to be avant-garde, I need to be,
Shocking. I need
shocking and like some of those lines, for example, like the line about, being a lesbian, is that's very like British in the humor with that line, and I could easily see a line like that being in something like a show called Peep Show or a number of other sort of kind of crudish British comedies. It's just that but these comedies I'm referring to have a certain level of hyper realism to them, certain level of absurdity that is maintained. And this film just didn't maintain its level of absurdity. Everything needed to be hyper for all of this stuff to sort of work. And because things were really unbalanced, I think with that, it made it a very boring and uncomfortable watch. And I was bored most of the time.
me too. I felt it was too clean as well.
Yeah.
With it just yeah, it just it's like somebody filmed something and used a Instagram filter over
Yeah.
it, and it was just too clean. There was no gritting. I mean, obviously, other than the graveyard scene, there was no grittiness to it.
Yeah.
There was no. If you expect me to believe this is a blimp in time into 2006 about
Yeah.
these characters,
Yeah.
there was no realism to me
No.
on it. Like
No.
I cannot imagine there are people. Granted, I don't know about British society,
Mm.
but here in America, I can't imagine somebody getting away with half of this stuff. He would have
No.
been arrested. He would
No.
have been
This
the
is why it
prime
needed.
subject.
Yeah, this is why it needed that level of absurdity, because essentially this is like a wannabe. Again, there's so many ripoffs. Like it's ripping off of Towns Mr. Ripley. Like I've said, there's elements where it's ripping off of Gatsby, where Felix is basically Gatsby and Oliver is Nick Carraway, and ironically, the film has Carey Mulligan, who played Daisy um, from the Great Gatsby movie
Yeah,
with Leonardo
Leonardo
DiCaprio,
DiCaprio.
which is fun. But there's those elements of that happening in here. There's what was the other one? Just in my mind. Shoot. Anyway, there's a Talented Mr. Ripley. I've said it right. Anyway, there's elements of other movies that are happening in this that are making me go, I've seen this elsewhere, but better. And you're not doing anything that original. I know. Knives Out. This film is basically Knives Out,
Yeah,
in which at the end of the movie, the pompous rich people are ejected from the house, and the sole person is the poor person who now owns the house. Um, and so it's like, well, I've seen this dynamic, and I don't even like Knives Out, but Knives Out handled that thematic trajectory much better than this did. So again,
yeah.
I'm like, I've seen all of this stuff, but better, which is why it's like I've titled this an untalented ripoff, because like there's nothing like there's no
There's
substance to
nothing
this
new or
thing.
refreshing to this.
Mm-mm.
It's
No.
just pretty people
Yeah.
and just shocking scenes, and that's about it.
Yeah.
I don't think I will think about this movie in a year from now or 2 years from now.
No.
I
No.
don't think I would ever recommend this movie.
Yeah.
I would probably recommend this to one person, and that's my
Mm.
best friend, because she likes stuff like this. So
Right.
she probably will be a fan of it because she's very much eat the rich mentality, which is fine. That's her MO. But
Yeah.
I have to rewatch this fucking movie.
Yes, for your thing.
But I think I'll
Um,
rewatch it and rewatch Talented Mr. Ripley so that at least I
you
have
should do it.
some palate cleanse and also just talking points of it. Because
Yes.
I just I understand taking movies and breaking them down in the symbolisms of
Sure.
color choices, set
Sure.
designs, costumes. I get it. I've worked in Hollywood. I understand. But to me, this just screamed just like TikTok, Instagram generation of we just got to make everything look pretty
Yeah.
and clean and nice and artistic, and the sun hits her hair. Yeah, stupid stuff
Yes.
like that.
I totally agree. Biffer the Hobbit says, after Saltburn, I had a desire to rewatch Parasite. Parasite is a fantastic
Good
movie. That
movie.
is a wonderful movie about the, poor
That
versus the
is
rich
yes.
and
That is a great
invading.
movie about that,
Mm,
about poor versus rich. That to me is the stick it to the rich type of movie.
yes.
100% behind that. Love it. I actually watched it for the first time last year because I
Mm,
was in a job interview and the person who was interviewing me asked me if I've ever seen it. We're
mm,
talking about movies. I was like, no. So I was like, shit, I better watch it before I go to the next round of the interview. So I
yes.
watched it, loved it, thought it was great.
Yep.
Uh, it made sense.
Yes.
This does not.
No. Nope. I totally agree. And I'm genuinely, I mean, I guess, there is the whole like, well, art's subjective and stuff. And it is. I get it. Some people can love stuff and that I think is terrible. But this to me is just like it has that like that wannabe Oscar Oscar
Oh,
bait
it
that,
never
oh,
will be. No.
look at our arty farty film, and people love it because it's not one of those Marvel movies, and it's like, I mean, yeah, but it's also just not very good. It's just not very good. It's a very self-indulgent movie. I think the whole thing is very self-indulgent and unnecessary. And
I would actually
yeah.
recommend her other movie. I'm checking
Mm,
out that. If you don't like this, check
yeah.
out her other movie. See if you like that. That to me had a little bit better story, fleshed out characters, structure to it. But yeah, this is not Oscar bait to me. No,
No.
not in soundtrack's pretty good. I'll give them that. I
Yeah,
have
it's
the
got some good
soundtrack.
songs in it. Yes, it
Soundtrack's
has.
pretty good. But
Yes.
yeah, no,
Yes.
I will watch it one more time, and that is about it.
Yes. My hope, my hope for the future is that, I mean, I really enjoy the film Oppenheimer, because we were
Haven't seen
talking
it
we're
yet.
talking about films that, blatantly for the TikTok generation. My hope is that that we will still, get films that are not for the thick-headed. And Oppenheimer, I think, is a really good example. I'm not a massive Nolan fan. I should caveat that with, I'm not a big Nolan fan in general. I like some of his early work, but I think pretty much after Inception, I've really just not really cared for much of what he's done since then. But Oppenheimer was, to me, a very impressive movie. Again, it structurally holds up really well, but it also has various timelines. You're following like three different points in time. Half the movie's in black and white, and the fact that like it was one of the biggest movies of the summer and now won a bunch of awards was kind of a relief to me, because I was like, okay, good, because this was a real movie, like a real movie that gave you something, and you could really sink your teeth into it. Whereas Saltburn, you're just like, what is this shit? Or
Well, I think we're gonna still have movies. I mean, look at it might be international. I mean, look at Godzilla minus one. Look how
yeah,
much money it brought to the US box office. They
yeah,
brought it back too, or they're bringing it back at
yes,
the end of January for the box office. So I think there's still people who want when I go into a movie, I want to feel something. I either
yeah,
want to be happy, sad, scared. I want to feel those emotions. I want that rush, right? Those
yeah,
endorphins. This movie didn't give me any endorphins but annoyance. Like I
yes,
was
yeah,
annoyed that I had to watch this movie.
yeah.
Uh
And
and there, yeah,
I think again, like you mentioned this. Maybe this should have been a show. Maybe not. I don't know. But I think again, I think there's still a lot of people tuning into streaming stuff,
yes.
and various like HBO level shows for their better quality entertainment. I mean, like we recently just finished, we binged Slow Horses on Apple TV. Apple Plus, whatever it's called, I don't know. And there's 3 seasons of it, based on a series of books by a guy named Mick Herron, London-based spy thriller. Fantastic, just fantastic. The characters are great, the plot's really good. It's dark but also witty at times. That really good stuff. And we've also started, because we only just got Apple, but we also started watching The Morning Show. I thought that thing was a fucking comedy. It's like a really serious drama, and it's
It's really
great.
good. It's great.
Yeah, like
Servant is too as well. And I
yes,
think a show on Apple TV that people are missing out on is Physical.
physical.
Uh,
Okay.
yeah, with Rose Bryan. It's
Mm,
about an 80s housewife who has an eating disorder, who gets into at that time it's the craze of exercise home videos and stuff like that. Uh
mm. I'll
I
check that out.
really enjoy it. It's uh, I think it's one of their better shows.
Yeah, yeah.
And Servant too. Servant's very good as well.
Yes. Yeah. So I think people are tuning in to their, at the moment they're still tuning in there, and I think cinema it's going to take it a little bit longer to get back to a healthy state. Um
Well, I have a
Mainly
question for
mm,
you. Sorry to
yeah,
interrupt, but I have a question. And it was brought up on my stream last night. What about TV shows though? So TV shows now are what 6, 8 episode lengths per season. They went from 22 episodes where they could actually really flesh out characters and
yeah.
storylines. Uh, but I feel that TV shows nowadays don't do that. There are
Mm,
gems. There are people who know how to structure and write shows, knowing that they're going to at least do 2 or 3 seasons.
yeah.
One comes to mind to me is one of my favorites from same producers of Lost.
Yeah.
Really great show. Leaves cliffhangers at the end as
Yeah.
if they're going to have another season. But
Yeah.
then you have shows like The Witcher, who's not really well written for
Terrible.
8 episodes.
Terrible.
Uh and I can't even think of other shows because I don't waste my time. But people have
Yeah.
complained about. So
Well, I could say like some of the Star Trek streaming
Star
shows,
Trek,
Strange New
yeah.
Worlds, Discovery, the first 2 seasons of Picard.
But then I go back and I watch Seinfeld, and granted it's a comedy, but
Yeah.
there are 22, 23 episodes per season.
Yeah.
You know, there's storylines, there's
Yeah.
callbacks to other episodes.
Yeah.
So where's the balance in that? Because will TV now forever from this point be 8 episode seasons,
Mm,
or are we going to go back fleshing
mhm.
out? Are 8 episode seasons failed movies in a sense, like, hey, we have this great idea for this movie. Actually, no, it'd be more makes sense. Let's, instead
Yeah.
of a 4 hour movie, let's flush it out to eight
Yeah.
hours.
Yeah, I would say that maybe there's something to the 8 episode thing being a failed movie. I mean, I know a lot of people recently loved and watched the Reacher show on Amazon. It's so fucking dumb.
Really,
Um,
we're in the middle of season one,
I just
so
hate it. I hate it so
I
much.
like it because it's a breath of fresh air, because it's there's not a lot of ideology put into it as it is nowadays with a lot of TV show. Uh,
Yeah,
So it
yeah,
so while if it came out like 5, 10 years ago, I don't think it would be as big as it is now. But I
yeah,
think because it mainstream media and stuff are pushing such I ideas and
yeah,
different ideology and stuff. I think because it's like, oh, this is something refreshing. This is just it's a dumb like thriller TV show. It's
yeah.
got instead of what's come out in the last 2, 3 years.
Yeah, I mean, I can take that point, and it's simplistic on that side. It's not really it's not really preaching a message or anything like that. It's just big hunking action man goes and beats
From what
people
I'm
up.
told, it's very identical to the books. So
Yeah, I'm
it's
not a
a
fan of Lee Child.
but that's what I'm saying. Like, it's very identical to the book. So instead of writers putting their own ideas and their own thoughts and morals into these
Well,
characters.
Lee Child is putting his own ideas in
Well, no,
there
no,
because
I meant
he
that's fine.
oh, the
But they're faithful to the source
right, I
material,
see what you're saying.
regardless
I
of what
see.
the source material is.
Right.
Where you and I hate to look at look at Witcher too. I mean, Witcher is
Right.
not pretty close to the source material. A
Yeah.
lot of writers input. Look at She-Hulk. She-Hulk is a great example of that.
That is nothing like the comics.
Yeah, exactly. Nothing like the comics, nothing. Writers put their own ideas. So I think that's why people are drawn to Reacher. It's because it's a faithful adaptation, whether you like the books or not, or follow it stuff. And it's not trying to change your morals or regardless where you land. It's
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
it's a dumb show that everybody's just enjoying, action show. You don't have to think about it. I think
Yes.
that's the appeal to it.
I think so. I definitely agree. Like the problem with a lot of TV shows nowadays, with the streaming or whatever, is that there is certainly sort of a preachy element. And there's a very famous screenwriter named Robert McKee, who I literally have his quote on my computer, and it says misusing and abusing art to preach your screenplay will become uh a thesis film. And basically it's like that's pointless, because your thesis film is not going, you're not going to take two sides of the argument. You're going to take one side and push
Mhm.
that one side, which is why, again, I really we've been rewatching like X-Files and Deep Space Nine, and we've also been watching Magnum PI, and about a year ago we watched a show called Spencer for Hire. And it's funny to me, like when you look at shows from the 70s and 80s and 90s and early 2000s, there was a much more interesting balance of multiple ideas, and not necessarily coming down on one side or another. I mean, there's that famous episode of Star Trek Next Generation where there's a dying Romulan, and the only person on the Enterprise who could do a blood transfusion is Worf. And Beverly, Dr. Crusher's like, Worf, we need you to do this. And he's like, fuck off, no. He's like, Romulans murdered my parents and killed all of my friends on the space station. Like, I'm not going to give him my blood. If that was written today, by the end of the episode, Worf and the Romulan would be hugging and crying and
Yeah.
holding each other because he helped him. But in that moment, in that episode, like, Worf does not help that Romulan. And it's like, that is a really powerful message. That is a really powerful theme that you're doing there, because it's like, Worf is a good guy, but he's not going to he can't do this. and that
It
makes him
shows
an interesting, complex character.
exactly, it shows depth to the character. Not everybody's perfect, right? Everybody
Yeah,
has demons and skeletons in the closet,
yeah,
but I think nowadays things are too political, so that's why something like Reacher is refreshing because it's
yeah,
just like it's pure adaptation from the books.
yeah,
There's no additives to it. They're not
yeah,
trying to make it preachy. They're not trying to make it political. It's literally just about a guy who's trying to solve a murder and all
yeah,
this stuff.
yeah,
So I can understand why people might not like it, but I can understand why people find it refreshing nowadays.
yeah,
It adaptions are very interesting to me how it's grown because
mm,
it used to be when I was growing up, people wanted faithful adaptions. Look at Lord of
yes,
the Rings. Is
yes,
it a 100% pure faithful adaptation?
no,
No.
of course
But
not.
it's pretty fucking close.
Oh, yeah,
Look at, the Harry Potter movies. I was discussing this with a
sometimes
friend.
painfully too close.
The Harry Potter movies are probably 40-50% of the books,
Yeah,
but they're a good adaptation at the time. They're a good introduction to the characters for people who didn't read the books. I
mm,
know a lot of people who've only watched the movies, never read the books.
yeah,
But if you and this was worries me about them bringing it back as a TV show,
mm,
what kind of ideology are they going to place into it? Instead,
mm,
give me a faithful adaptation. You
yeah,
have the script right here. Just
yeah,
that's you have it. Just give
yeah,
me a faithful adaptation. As a fan, I will love it. Even if
yeah,
I've heard this story a million times, I'm going to love it.
yeah,
But once you start changing things about characters or start changing the way they think, what their moral compass is, then
mm,
it's not a faithful adaptation to me. You're literally writing your own story. I mean, it's pretty much like Rings of Power. Rings of Power,
oh,
take
yeah,
Lord of the Rings out of it. Take the
yeah,
concept of Lord of the Rings. It's still a really poorly written, boring
fantasy.
show.
Oh,
Yeah,
definitely,
it's
definitely.
it's boring.
Yeah,
But you would not have the backlash of everyone who is a Tolkien fan if you
yes.
just said, "Hey, we're just going to create a fantasy TV show."
Yes,
That's
I
it.
agree. And Peter Jackson is, I mean, there's plenty of interviews of him online where he basically said, you know, we consciously decided not to inject like 2000s politics
Yeah.
into it. We literally just wanted to be as faithful to Tolkien as possible. And I think with adaptations, that's a really wise thing to do. I think with other sort of TV shows, whether that's a legacy show like you're doing a new series of Star Trek or something like that, you have those shows I think are inherently political. I know people don't necessarily agree with that, but like, come on, Star Trek is
It
pretty fucking
is. Yeah,
political.
they're all. Yeah.
You know, and even shows like then it's like even like the shows like Magnum PI, like there are political bends to all these shows. The difference between back then and now is now I think we have a lot of unintelligent writers,
Yes. And
and
people
who
who are
don't know
not
how to yes,
passionate about the IP either.
they don't know how to handle the hype IP, but they also don't know how to handle the material. They don't know how to handle the theme. They don't know how to handle the politics that are in their hand. It takes time and effort and energy to do something that is interesting and challenging, you know, on both sides. I think that's kind of one of the biggest problems today. But back to your main point of is the eight episode thing failed failed movies. I think a little bit is that because a lot of times these streaming shows, whether it's anything from even Stranger Things to you know episodes start some seasons 1 and 2 of Star Trek Picard and Discovery, there is not enough story to stretch out, and it's blatant that they had a film's worth of ideas that they then tried to badly stretch into a whole season. And there's a lot of I can't tell you how many times I watch a streaming show, particularly on Netflix and even sometimes Amazon, where I'm like, everything that's happening now is pure fluff. It's pure
Mhm.
padding because they just don't know how to like edit themselves down. And you see it with books as well. I mean, the last J.K. Rowling book was like 1,000 pages, and I I read a page of it, and I'm like, half of this page could have been edited out.
Yes.
You know, so you have the problem of I think we have not as we have less intelligent writers at the moment, and we also have there's maybe a little bit of a crisis in editing, where it's you need to axe your darlings a little bit. um
It reminds me the most faithful adaptation of a TV show from a book that I've seen in the last 10 years, I would
Mm,
say, maybe 5, was The Outsider.
haven't seen.
It's a Stephen King book. The book's pretty
Mm,
good. Uh, it takes Stephen King for a grain of salt, right? I like his books. Sometimes he can't end them very well.
yeah, yeah.
I don't. I think this is also a problem too. People go, "Oh, you like Stephen King? You must vote like Stephen King or talk like." No,
Mm,
I think sometimes he says the most asinine things, but I still like his work. I
yeah,
I
sure.
can separate the artist from the art and
Yeah.
still enjoy it. So, The Outsider was a TV show that what's his name from Arrested Development and Ozarks? I can't think of it.
Oh, Jason Bateman.
Jason Bateman starred in, and I believe he directed the first episode. It's a very
Okay.
dark storyline. It's about a shapeshifter in a sense, somebody who's able
Oh,
to
okay.
shapeshift and um, blame people for crimes, right?
Right.
Easily. And I was very worried about this because normally Stephen King's adaptations aren't really that great. Pet Cemetery is probably one of the few, but I mean, look at Dark Tower, and that movie was garbage.
Oh, yeah.
This show, this is where the show is better than the book in a
Mm,
scenario. A very faithful adaptation of the book, very faithful. Like if you're a fan of the book, you'll love it, but they also flush it out a little bit more. And I think it's like 8 or 10 episodes. It's done by
mm,
HBO at the time.
mhm,
Very good. But then you take again examples like She-Hulk and or any of the Marvel stuff that's come out in
mm,
the last year that's based off actual source material,
yeah,
and they just go, "We just want the title and we
exactly.
don't care. We're just
Yeah.
going to make the fans mad." I
Yes.
don't understand why these companies like to lose money. I feel like the amount of money Disney would have if they faithfully adapted these things
Yeah.
to the screen would be astronomical. People would be praising Disney
Yeah.
for it.
That's why with me with Marvel is once Civil War happened, that was when I really tapped out.
Uh,
I stopped going regularly to see the movies 'cause I thought, what was the point in calling that Civil War? Civil
it's
War is
not
such an
really.
epic comic storyline. You could have done something that was a little bit closer to it and made it so much more. And honestly, the idea of Civil War, like that could have been a two-part Avengers movie. Like,
That movie should have just been labeled Winter Soldier Part 2, to be
yeah,
honest. It was just a continuance of Winter Soldier. So I don't you're absolutely right. The storyline of Civil War in the comics is vastly large. But also you have to look at it too. Disney doesn't have at the time, I don't believe, had the property of the X-Men and other
no,
characters
they
from
they
Marvel.
didn't, they didn't. But I think you still could have done it. I think you could have. You didn't need to go as big as what the comic did with Civil War, but you still could have with the characters you did have. Like you had Daredevil, you had Jessica Jones, you had all those people that were out there. You could have that could have been a really good part to like time to incorporate those Netflix TV shows with the movies, and they squandered it and made Civil War a Winter Soldier Part 2, like you said. And I thought, nah, I'm done with
But
this. And then tuned in for a couple others. I think I went to cinema for the last two Avengers movies, but those are the only ones I think I went to. Maybe saw one Spider-Man movie, maybe saw Homecoming. I think I did, and that was it.
So we
I was
were very faithful Marvel people, obviously, because I live with the Marvel encyclopedia. So,
yes,
I mean, I can remember waiting hours ahead of time for Winter Soldier to sit. This is before they did assigned seating kids
yes, yes.
in movies, and I remember we saw No Way Home. We liked it, and then what did we see next? Love and Thunder. I
Oof.
was so annoyed. Chris liked it, but Chris could had an emotional connection related to it because the whole cancer thing,
Mm,
similar storyline to what I had to deal with my disease. So
right,
Chris
right.
understood that part of it. And
Yeah.
mind you, we both enjoy the Jane Foster Thor comic line.
Okay.
It's pretty
Right.
good. I
Yep.
think it's pretty good. And then I was like, okay, what we saw Ant-Man. I was like, no, this cannot be Marvel's downfall, and also the TV shows. I liked WandaVision. I thought Loki was okay. The other ones I could do without.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's just
Yeah.
what is happening? Because you look at the first 10 years and you could even forgive some of the faults into it because they were
You could.
trying. You could
Yeah.
see the effort into it. It's like they don't try. If I was Marvel, I was shut down for 2 years, come back with a stronger Fantastic Four and didn't take it from the X-Men.
Yeah.
Just do it that
I
way.
their biggest problem was that is it Robert Downey Jr. was the MCU?
Yeah. Well, yes. So and then to flip these characters. I understand there are female versions of these characters in the comics, but to take it from that point,
Yeah.
instead of going, "Hey, we did great. We honored Iron Man, didn't
Yeah.
really honor Thor very much, but Captain
Mhm.
America, we did these pretty solid. Let's retire them. They're done. We'll continue with some side characters and TV shows, but our movie focus is going to be now the X-Men. The X-Men are a big
Yeah,
thing for people. You know, even if you weren't comic book reader back in the day, you watched the TV show, the cartoon show
definitely.
and
Oh,
stuff.
yeah, of
You know
course.
their brand names, you know their
Yeah.
home brandings, you know.
Yeah.
So let's start off with a strong Fantastic Four and let's take it from that.
Yeah.
No, instead we get Echo, we get She-Hulk, we get
Mm.
I can't even Secret Invasion, which I didn't even
Oh,
bother.
yeah, I didn't watch it at all.
Yeah,
Not
you
at
get
all.
all these shows and it's frustrating because as somebody who's worked in Hollywood, I'm like, you have the script. You have
Mm.
the script. It's the
Yeah.
source material, guys. Like, I
Yeah.
don't know how hard this is for you.
Yeah. It to me, it's I mean, I can't even think about, like, I don't know if there's some sort of I don't even know if there's like a weird like rights thing where like if we use the name but don't use any of the storyline, do we don't maybe we don't have to pay someone, but then Marvel normally just their writers are writers for hire, which means they don't own any the writers don't get anything anyway.
Disney owns Marvel anyway. It's just
Yeah.
but look at how successful The Boys are or
Yes.
Invincible, you know, knockoff
Mm,
superhero
mhm.
shows, right? Knockoffs, but The
Yeah.
Boys have been around for a long time in comics.
Mm,
But look how successful it is
yeah.
because in a sense they are faithful adaptations from their comics.
Yes.
They are closer to it than any of the Marvel shit that's been coming out in the last
Yeah.
2 3 years.
I really like The Boys. That's been a really fun show to watch. Yeah.
I
The close
Gen V I thought was very good too, the spinoff.
Nah, I can get into that one. We tried, but I was like, "Eh,
How
boring."
many episodes did you get into it?
I think we gave it 2, and I think people said you need to give it more than that, but I was
You
like,
do.
it's 8
You do.
episodes. Why do I need to give
You
it
need to at
7
least
episodes?
3 episodes. I know, it's a rough start. I was almost out, but I finished it, and
Yeah.
to me, Gen V is a good example because it doesn't exist in comics. It's a
Mm.
good example of writers actually taking from the source material and then creating
Oh, I
their own
see.
universe in a sense.
Right.
Something that Amazon should have learned with Rings of Power, but hey, we're here now.
I can't yeah, oh, Rings of Power. My god, that show.
That
I
makes
can't.
everybody like, everybody I'm ever on a stream with, anybody mentions Rings of Power, it's the same, like, "Oh, stupid shit."
Yeah.
Everybody,
It
everybody. I'm just like,
I can't, comprehend what anyone was doing or thinking with
I
that one.
I have not met
I
one
got
person
nothing.
who's liked that show.
No, I don't think I have either. I don't think I have either. No, I think
Yet
most
it's
people
getting
have
a season 2.
somehow. I guess I don't fucking know. I don't know. I won't. I might watch it just to like. It might. I don't know if I'll
You give
watch
me
it.
the highlights if you're gonna watch it, because I have no desire to do so. I think it's a, insult to Tolkien.
Yeah, I think so.
I think it's a spit on his grave. I think he would be turning in his grave. I also think it's a spit to Peter Jackson too. Uh,
Yeah. Well,
I
when
yeah,
they said that they reached out to Peter Jackson, and then Peter Jackson was like, "Yeah, I said
no,
send me your scripts," and they never did. I was like, "Oh, okay. Nope. Nope.
yeah.
Nope. Nope. These guys don't know what they're doing, and clearly they don't. Clearly."
Amazon would have so much money if they just said, "Hey, Peter, could you do, could you do another Lord of the Rings for us? Could you base it off of this, please?" And everybody would be like, "Yeah,
Oh yeah.
yeah." I
Even if
appreciate The Hobbit more now, the adaptations of The Hobbit more now, that
yeah.
as well as I've
Yeah.
gotten older.
I watch them over Christmas 'cause I always watch The Lord of the Rings over Christmas, and I sometimes I will also do The Hobbit, and I decided to do The Hobbit as well. And while I like the first Hobbit movie, the second Hobbit movie loses me around the barrel scene.
Mm,
And then the third one is just 3 hours of a battle, which is kind of boring. But what I was telling some a friend of mine after watching it was that, you know what? I'm glad that The Hobbit exists, and I'm glad that Peter Jackson did it. And while I don't agree or like everything that was done with the Hobbit trilogy, like making it a trilogy, I'm glad that they did the appendices, because those are some of my favorite bits in the whole trilogy. The Hobbit trilogy was the extended, like the
Mhm.
extra stuff, more so than the Hobbit stuff. But also that the film was done at the right time to make sure that all of the actors who were in in the Lord of the Rings that needed to be in the Hobbit were still in it.
Yeah.
Gandalf, Saruman, Gladriel, you know, Elrond, all of the same actors, which is like, any much longer, much more beyond that, we would have lost Christopher Lee, which,
Yeah.
how could you have Sauron and not be Christopher Lee with, that just would have been, I mean, you could have done it, but it would have felt, you would have felt the change. So I'm like, yeah, even though I don't quite like it, I'm glad that they exist i-
Oh, I
in the
couldn't
way they do.
imagine nowadays
'Cause
if
I
they
just can't
try
imagine like people like who
yeah.
did Rings of Power. I can't imagine how people like that would have potentially done what they would have done with The Hobbit. I think that would have been a travesty. And as Biff the Hobbit says, "The Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power is cultural vandalism," and I don't disagree with you, buddy.
I think that's the drop in the that was the battle cry for
Mm,
pop culture for me. I think from what
mm,
I've seen. I think, while, Marvel was on the downfall, people were complaining about it, DC as well, a lot of other IPs having problems,
mm.
but I think as soon as you were involving Tolkien fans of the books and the
Yeah,
movies, I think that was the battle cry of like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa,
yeah.
something is going on here. They are vandalizing our IPs." But I also think Marvel fans and everybody was like, "Hey, especially Star Wars fans were like, "Hey, we've been saying this for like years, guys. Where have you been?"
Oh, it's true. God, it's so true. And it's one of those things where it's like, because again, I know people always say things when they kind of reference like Star Trek, and they'll be like, "Oh, well, everyone hated Next Generation and Deep Space Nine and Voyager at the time." And it's like, yes, they hated all of those shows for about one season,
Mhm.
and then everybody loved them. Like, not everybody, but it won a lot of people over. Star Trek Discovery has never won me back. Strange New Worlds has never won me back. The
Oh, I mean,
only
look
the
at
only
Doctor Who.
one.
Look at Doctor Who, the mess that is
Yes,
Doctor Who.
Doctor Who
That
lost me when Peter Capaldi left, and I'm not going back. I've tried, and
It
you
was
know,
Matt Smith for me. I tried to
yeah,
give, Peter, like, a couple episodes, I couldn't get into it. I was like, "Nope, I'm just not something
yeah,
I'm back in." I'm glad I have the memories of, what I enjoyed because
yeah,
I was able to experience things for the first time while, my partner at the time had seen it all, so
yeah.
it was very interesting. I like Torchwood. I think it gets a bad rap sometimes.
It's pretty rough.
It's pretty rough, but to be honest, it's more enjoyable than what Doctor Who is nowadays.
It is. It's sad but true. But honestly, and it's weird because it's written by well, to me the Doctor Who shift is particularly interesting because it's I was really excited for Russell T Davies to take back over. And I
A
was
lot of
so
people were,
I w
and
I thought, "Great, we're gonna get back to what it was great about Doctor Who," and the specials were terrible.
I didn't
Really,
even bother. Didn't even
they
bo
felt like
I
rusty writing. I just was like, "Oh, this is
They
not
almost got
good."
us. I was like, "Hey, Chris, Tennant's gonna be back. Let's
Yeah.
like, I mean, great. It's the 60th anniversary. I enjoyed the 50th. Let's do this." And I didn't catch the first one, but I was reading my friends' live reactions, and I was like, "Oh, no.
Yeah. Yeah,
Oh, no."
it's pretty rough, and then I did watch the Christmas special to see the first episode with Shooty, and none of it felt like Doctor Who. Like, it none of it did. It
Well, it's
felt like
oops.
fashion model advertising clothes, and there's always a fashion element to Doctor Who, people always wearing funny interesting clothes, but this just felt like a step too far. It's felt like, because I don't hate the show, but because I like the first season or two of Sex Education, but then I think the third season was really pathetic and lost me and my wife. But because I kept thinking this show is all about the fashion, this show has nothing to do with the story. It's all about how
Mhm.
these people look and how they're dressed and what kind of makeup they're wearing, and it just felt very superficial. And I felt like that with this new Doctor. And then again, the first episode of Shooty was terrible. The script was I know Russell T Davies is a better writer than what he did with these scripts, and I don't know if this was Disney influence interference.
Oh, it had to be with the ideology of the, like, the wheelchair thing, and then actually giving a
Mm.
sexuality to the Doctor, which never existed in time. Like none of the characters, you never knew. That's the thing with
Yeah, well,
Doctor.
you
You
knew
just
with
never
Tennant.
knew.
You knew with Tennant.
Tenant, you do.
He was smooching on all the ladies.
But I'm saying it was never just similar to Captain Jack. It was never what the character was based off first off. Like
Yeah,
that
yeah,
is not who they are. It's
yeah.
just, part of a storyline that came across or something. But to have it as like this is bringing that to it's just I think
The
it's
one
stupid.
of the biggest I think most problematic things about current culture and pop culture is the emphasis on the over importance of sexual identity.
Yes,
It's and making that the thing that defines you, and it's like you know, and you should be more than that. Like
exactly.
that element should just be like a secondary thing to you, because why does that have to be the thing that defines you? Like
A character's sexuality has never turned me off from them if I enjoy the character. I don't
exactly.
care. I
Yeah.
just like it's secondary to me. To
Yeah.
me, I want to know what your motives are, where your moral compass is. What do you like? What how do you fit into this story?
Yeah.
Your sexuality to me, even if there is a romantic element to the story, it's secondary to me. As the
Yeah.
character is built.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, my friend just wrote a really, really good book called Ask for Mercy. His name's James Benmore. That has I won't spoil the book. I think go buy it, but the protagonist is a very interesting, different kind of protagonist for a crime novel. That you know. Hand in the hands of a lesser writer would not have could not have been handled as well, but he really nailed it, because there is a component to Mercy's character that is a sexual component, that's quite interesting, but handled really well. But the character is really well fleshed out, super fun, super interesting, tough, and it's like, yeah, this is great. But and then this component like is just a part of her identity, but it's not the defining thing about her, which I really applaud him for how he handled that particular character in that book. I'm being very vague about it because I want people
Yeah,
to go
no.
read it.
I mean, I understand. I mean, look at bring it back to Lord of the Rings. I mean, I didn't care who Frodo was shagging. You know what I mean? Like, I don't
Oh yeah,
care.
no, who cares? No,
At that point,
no,
it's a great character. It's a great
yeah,
developed out character. Brought
yeah,
half I don't care half the time for it. I just
no,
I want to know other things, and I don't like it when the first thing I have to know about the character is their sexuality. I don't care. I'm just
yeah,
it has no aspect to unless it's part of the story, unless it's something to do
yeah.
with the actual story. Then I
Which
mean, I get
we
it,
can
but
kind of tie it all back into Saltburn and stuff,
which
and talented Mr. Ripley. It's like Ripley was he was clearly homosexual. He was into Dickie, and then there was another guy that he was into at the end, and then eventually had to murder because it was going to foil his alibi basically. And it's like Ripley being gay was not a problem. Like there wasn't anything
mhm.
like, because it was we followed him as a person and as a character, and has we find out his motivations, and we work through it, and this becomes a facet of the story, and of and things like that I think makes him a more interesting rounded character. Whereas if it's just the first thing that's thrown in your face, all of Saltburn, which is just like a very kind of weirdly horny movie that doesn't go anywhere with it. It's like, well,
Yes.
okay, yeah, you're all pretty, you're all horny, and you're all trying to get something, but you're not, but you're jacking each other off, and like I don't care. I don't care about
I
any of this.
I think what it tells to a good character if you flip their gender. So, like with
Mm,
talented Mr. Ripley, if you flip the gender to female and you still have the same type of character,
mm,
still works.
yeah.
Here with Saltburn, if you flipped Barry to a woman, it would not work.
No, 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 it wouldn't. That would
Actually,
be
it would be differently because it would there would be a more sexual manner towards feel like a
he might actually
probably
be interested.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So,
But,
all
yeah,
right.
yeah, yeah. I see what you mean. But yeah, so it's an interesting world we live in, and I wish Saltburn didn't exist in this world that we live in, but it does, and I do not recommend it. I do not recommend it. Do not go watch Saltburn. Um, Go watch anything else. Go watch Paint Dry. It's such a pretentious jerky off movie. Can't stand it. Final thoughts. Any final thoughts on Saltburn or anything else we've talked about?
Don't watch Saltburn, but go watch Godzilla minus one.
Yes. Speaking of Godzilla minus one, I am going to be talking about it next week. This was something I decided to do today, so I will be back next Friday night, same time. Speaking about Godzilla minus one, with Blaine Andrew from Criticless, who
I
doesn't
love
like the
Brandon.
movie.
Really? But okay,
Jump
but
on Criticless, go read his review. He doesn't like it. Um,
I'm surprised by that. I'm
I
actually very.
I loved it. I loved it. It's
I
not
thought it was
perfect,
great.
but I
I
loved it.
I thought again it was a very refreshing movie. It was just character focused. I thought
Yes.
it was great. So yes, I think if you have not seen it, you're doing yourself a detriment. Go see Godzilla minus one
Yes,
in the
I agree.
theater. In the theater, get your
If you
popcorn
can, go
and go
see it in the
sit
theater.
in there.
It's
Yes.
wonderful. Wonderful experience. I'm excited to talk about it next week because I have a lot to say about it. And it'll be fun to discuss the different takes and points that Blaine has because some I'm like, I see where you're coming from. Others I'm like, let's discuss this. Let's
Yeah,
discuss this.
I'll be in the chat. I'll be in
Yeah.
the chat.
So
What do you?
it's gonna
Maybe
be
he watched the wrong Godzilla movie. Maybe it was Godzilla 19.
right. I watched this
Yeah.
thing with these fish and the worm guy,
Puff Daddy showed up in a music video.
I know, right? So I'll be back doing that. Where can people find you?
I am on Twitter at Nerd Dollface. I'm actually going to be streaming tomorrow a Lego build set, so it's going to be a pretty chill stream, just building
Nice,
Legos. Yeah.
nice.
I've been sick for 2 weeks, so I was like, it's an easy way to kind of get back into the groove of things.
Yeah.
You can also follow my YouTube channel Inside All Day, where we've got a couple really cool projects coming in February.
Mm.
So it's very secretive, but yes.
Good. I'm
Yes.
excited to see what these projects are. Wonderful. Yeah. So go follow the Inside All Day on
YouTube.
YouTube and on Spotify and anywhere you get this stuff. I mean, do you put your live streams on Spotify and stuff like that?
I will be.
Okay.
I haven't yet. The only live stream I have on the channel right now is Dames and Dorks every Thursday at 5 p.m. Pacific time, where
Yes.
it's a bunch of us girls talking about pop culture from a woman's perspective.
Yeah.
We all are from different nerd backgrounds. We have
Nice.
Lily, who's a very good Star Wars fan. She knows the ins and out of the EU and everything. Mags, who's very much box office, Dr. Rachel, who knows a lot about Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter. She's
Awesome.
also does cosplay props and stuff.
Cool.
And then Nomi, who's very well rounded, just like me. We're a little bit of everything. So, and we have guests all the time. Hopefully, maybe we can have you on, Luke, at some point. I know there's a big time difference, but maybe
I
you can
will.
stay up later, wake up
I
early.
would wake up in the middle of the night to be on. Absolutely. Why not?
Okay. All right, we'll talk. But yeah.
Yes.
So that's going on right now. But yes, now I have the idea of maybe I should put them on Spotify.
Well, I mean, I put mine. I've been putting mine on, but my other episodes, the Secret Circle podcast those are more like interviews. There's no engagement with the chat. There's no chat involved with that.
Yeah.
But I do tend to put these up as bonus episodes on Spotify, so that it's all sort of in one place. But it's good fun. But yeah, anyway, go follow your Nadia's channel. They're good fun, good people. You'll enjoy it, and I will be here next week chatting Godzilla -1, and I'm very excited about that. But until next week, adios. Have a good weekend, and I don't know. Stay safe.
Stay
Bye.
safe.